Guys, welcome to Box Office Addict, my weekly live stream where we look at the weekend box office numbers. Excuse me, sorry about that. We check the weekend box office numbers, and we break down studio expectations, their performance, and we just discuss movies here. We just like to kind of have a free-form chat where I answer questions about whatever anyone wants to ask me. And I go movie by movie. Now, the format of the show's been off and on. Some weeks I focus on the box office a little bit too much. Some weeks I focus on the chat a little bit too much. Now, the last several weeks, I've been almost talking a little bit too much and kind of ignoring the actual box office and breaking it down for people. Because I know a lot of people who are fans of the show, or who may be new fans, just want to hear some stuff about the box office, and then they get me yakking on a 40-minute rant about some movie or something like that. So I'm going to try to keep it a little bit more controlled this week. I'm sorry this is a late episode. I actually wanted to do it earlier, but I was watching football. And when you watch football, it's kind of tough. Hey, guys. Hello, Lone Wolf Cub and Freddy and Kevin. All right, we got a sausage fest already. I like it. I like it, boys. Let's hear it for the boys. Wait, is that a girl? Crap. You ruined it. You ruined it. Jesus. Now I sound so stupid. But yeah, football didn't go my way today. The Patriots won again, so they're going to the 8th Super Bowl with Tom Brady, so I'm pretty bored with that. But so is the odyssey of me, I guess. So is my life. If you're a fan of other teams, that's kind of what you have to go through. Hope I'm not late for Jedi. Is he still in the top 10? Man, I haven't even talked about the box office yet. I haven't even gotten started yet. I've just this is a late show. Typically, I do this at 4 or 6 Eastern. But, yeah, this is at 7. I think I've done an 8 o'clock show before. So, literally, this one might not be as long as your typical box office addict. Some of them go for 2 hours, 3 hours. But, because it's so late right now, I just don't think there's going to be much chance I'll be able to do a long show. We broke the record last week. 3 hours and, 15 minutes. It was the longest episode of Box Office Addict. I went and edited out a little bit of that and got it done in 3 hours because I was like, this last 10 minutes is just nonsense. It's just me literally not saying anything for about 10 minutes. Hello, female empowerment. How good to see you here. I've been looking for you, female empowerment. What are you doing down this dark alley? No, is that you with Gary Busey? Oh boy, I'm scared. Great, female empowerment's come to get me. I'm sorry about my Rose video. I apologize. Not only is Rey not a Mary Sue, she's the greatest character of the last 20 years. Ripley, Sarah Connor? No, Rey. It's all about Rey. Whatever her last name is. She's just Rey. I never thought about that. There's like Finn doesn't have a last name, right? But he's a slave. And I know we don't know Rey's parents, but it's funny to think it's like Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, right? And then Han Solo. But then you have Poe Dameron, Finn, and Rey. But then you get Kylo Ren at Ben Solo. And then Hux. Does Hux have a first name? I guess we'll never know. We must hurry, or Jedi disappears. Hello, my friends. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into the box office this week. I've been talking way too much. Like I said, the last few weeks have not been focusing on the box office, which is what this show's all about. It's called Box Office Addict. And I know a lot of people out there that are fans say this has kind of become a Bill Burr's Monday morning podcast where I'm just a guy by myself who rants for a couple hours and it's entertaining. I understand that. That's pretty cool. Ghoul. It's pretty ghoul, yeah. That's a really ghoul thing, guys. But, you know, I love the Bill Burr comparisons. I'm very fond of those. I understand. I think I'm a little smarter than Bill Burr, which I don't mean as an insult to Bill Burr, but sometimes I've heard him in conversations and he's in his 40s, and it's like, man, did you not, like, go to high school? You don't seem to know very basic stuff, but wonderful comedian and very funny and insightful, really cool guy. So, not talking crap on Bill Burr here, I am a fan. You're sexist for not liking The Last Jedi. No! No female empowerment! Damn it! I love it all. I like the box office breakdown. I like the off-topic stuff. This is now my go-to show. I don't find any other analysis to be as salient. It's usually just a bunch of surface crap. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Destiny Captain. Hey, Pat. Here is something for why Man of Steel doesn't work. Someone I follow likes Man of Steel because he feels that it expands the Superman mythos and it's a mature take on Superman. I've heard people say that, which is really weird. I don't. People always say that it treats Superman as a. Even Mundane Matt said this in a recent video. He said that he liked the new Superman movies because it's a deconstruction of Superman, and yeah, it explores the mythos and makes him more human. It's like, what two movies did you see? Because Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. The idea on paper is that. I don't disagree. That's what Zack Snyder's trying to do in the screenwriters. But most of those movies are like, most of what Superman does in Man of Steel in the second half is just punch Zod. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, it's just a bunch of action. But really it is. It's like a 40-minute battle where they just hit each other. Like, that's not exploring Superman's mythos or deconstructing him. It's just an action scene. Maybe you could say the first half. In Batman v Superman, he has 43 lines of dialogue. And he's not even the main character, and it's a lot of other people's perception of Superman, which actually isn't true. Like, what Batman says about Superman in that movie isn't true. How Lex Luthor views Superman is kind of, like, nobody's really right about Superman in that movie, so it's not even a deconstruction, because at the end he's just Superman. He dies and sacrifices himself like Superman should. Like, there's not a character there. Even when he shows up again in Justice League and he's more entertaining, he's just different now, because whoever worked on it realized. Oh, so that's his name. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. They don't say the name of Tarkin, I don't think either, but Box Office Mojo is sexist for only putting Pitch Perfect 13 in 13th place. Pitch Perfect 3, not Pitch Perfect 13. It's like the Police Academy of movies, or it's Leonard Part 6. Yeah, let's deconstruct Superman before establishing him. Yeah, really, I know. Let's break down the mythos of Superman. It's like, come on, man. And anytime anyone's ever tried to do that, even in comic books, it doesn't really work that well. Like, Red Sun gets away with that by Mark Millar. But so many comics that, yeah, deconstruction of Superman's just kind of pointless. You can deconstruct his character in other ways, like Watchmen. Dr. Manhattan's basically Superman. And it's a commentary on Superman in a lot of ways. But or how Superman is kind of the Dark Knight Returns. But typically the best Superman comics and stories are pretty loyal to Superman and his character. It doesn't like to go to these different... It's my favorite Superman stories, at least, for all seasons, or Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow by Alan Moore, which is a great comic. Here's Krypto die in that comic. Yeah, just that era of Superman, the cartoon Superman, the animated show in Justice League and Unlimited. Yeah, a lot of, I don't really like that whole human approach to, like how Max Landis got all this acclaim for writing Superman as a hipster college kid. I didn't really like that. Like, I like, that terrific comic, I believe Grant Morrison wrote it, All-Star Superman. It's, where Superman's, like, dying, and he's like dying and he's in the machine. That's an amazing comic book. Like, there's so many great Superman stories, and they're pretty loyal to Superman for the most part. Like, nobody seems to want to make a just Superman movie. Like, Bryan Singer wanted to make a Richard Donner movie that was just weird. It's like half a Richard Donner remake of Superman, then a Superman 3 that never existed, and then it's like this weird film he's trying to make it where it's like Superman has a kid and all that. And then, yeah, Zack Snyder had the great chance to just bring Superman back and make a classic Superman movie, and it's the most boring Superman movie in a lot of ways. And then Batman v Superman, he becomes a second character in his own series. And then Justice League, yeah, that's the first time he's been enjoyable in a while, is when he looks at the Flash. That's the best moment with Superman in like 30 years. It's him looking at the Flash for a few seconds. And it's like, why did it take Zack Snyder these many movies to finally understand on any basic level how Superman, like, what's likable about him? It's his power levels. And how he's just a normal guy that's boring and a Boy Scout. And he's not aware of how strong he is and all these things he can do. Like, there's all these wonderful little quirks. It's not that different from Steve Rogers' Captain America. It's a very fish out of water thing, you know, with the guy, that he's not as modern acting or as up to date as everyone else. He's not as hip. That's what's likable about Superman, is that, like, Batman's an old grumpy, you know, guy who's serious and you know, is willing to go to some darker places to get what he wants, and you know, and he knows Superman's just like a god. And yeah, Superman acts like, you know, he's very passive about a lot of, you know, he's more considerate, and it's the dynamic between those characters is so interesting. Like, they don't ever really want to give Superman his personality. They don't want to just let him be that guy from Kansas that we all love. They don't want him to be Clark Kent. Clark Kent's he doesn't even exist in the new movies. There is no Clark Kent. There was no Clark Kent in Man of Steel, very little, and there's no Clark Kent at all in Batman v Superman. He doesn't. I mean, there's really very little Clark Kent in the second movie at all, and it's just like, where's this character anymore? Like, that's part of who he is. Clark Kent. He's not Kal-El Superman. He's Clark Kent. That's who he identifies as. That's who he is. That's who his parents are. That he landed there and he met the most moral people ever who taught him the right thing. He could have landed anywhere, but he landed in the right place. That's what made it so great. And those people taught him, and he had that small town farm boy, everyday Joe kind of thing. You know, John Cusack in his prime would have been a great Superman. And I know Max Landis said that, but I said that before I heard Max Landis say, so don't go Max Landis. I've said that for years, that John Cusack should have played Superman, especially in the 90s. And yeah, it just sucks. Oh, Brad Bird should have been on Star Wars, Superman, James Bond. Brad Bird should just be directing everything. Man of Steel was essentially a Dragon Ball Z movie. It's not untrue. The second half does just... I remember being in the theater, and it was so weird. I was sitting in the theater, and I liked the first, like, 30 minutes of Man of Steel. I hated the kryptonite stuff, but I still was kind of into it with Russell Crowe. And all the stuff with Clark early on it's that moment he goes to the Fortress of Solitude, when he goes to that place, and the movie just feels so rushed at that point when Lois comes in and everything. And after that point, the movie is a mess. Everything after the scene where he goes to get the suit and flies is a mess. And it's rushed, and then it's like 45 minutes of action, just terrible, product placement. They just fly up in front of a Sears, they fight in an IHOP. It becomes a generic Michael Bay type movie. I mean, it just falls apart. You could do so much more with 10 minutes of action, right? Like, the Marvel knows this. People can crap on Marvel for their villains, and I understand that. And they can crap on Marvel for what they do. But what Marvel's so clever at is they save the final conflict for a very short amount of time. Like, think about Man of Steel if it was this kind of movie. Let's take the movie it wanted to be. And it's a 2.5-hour movie. Let's make it about 2 hours and 10 minutes. So most of the movie, an hour, is setting up Clark Kent in those flashbacks like Batman Begins. Then somewhere in about the hour mark, he starts to kind of become Superman. But he's still not Superman yet. And then he's starting to learn in the Fortress of Solitude about his life, and he learns things from his father, and this is being paralleled with the stuff with his father. Then only until the last 30-20 minutes of this movie, which is my version's 2 hours, there's been almost no Superman, very little. And then the last 20 minutes, he's in Smallville, where Zod and them show up, because the ship's there from when he was a kid, the ship he crashed in as a baby. And the last 10 minutes of the 15 minutes takes place in Smallville. They never go back to Metropolis. They never have those big fights in the city with the buildings falling down. None of that stuff's in this version. In this version, the entire final fight of Man of Steel is about 8 minutes long, and it's Superman versus Zod and the other goons in Metropolis. And then Metropolis realizes Superman is Clark Kent. Like the IHOP sequence. They realize, and they all say, hey, we're going to keep your secret. Your secret's safe with us, this town, because you saved us. We all know you. We knew your father. You grew up here. It's a small town. Nobody lives here. So it would make this great moment where Clark is a man. At the end, they accept him as Clark Kent. He's saying, am I a freak to you? I'm not like you. And they go, no, Clark, you're like all of us. You're just like anyone else here. You know? And then it would be this great emotional last 10 minutes, and he'd be fighting for Smallville and his mother, which is what the movie was trying to do. Like when he hit Zod and he says, "You tried to kill my mother." That's a really good moment. Yeah, but saying it's a lot better than Superman Returns is like saying it's better than watching paint dry. I mean, yes, but by comparison, that's not much of a compliment. Because Superman Returns is just boring beyond any. In fact, I think Superman Returns is a better looking movie than Man of Steel. I think it's better acted for the most part. I think it's got better dialogue. I think it's probably got better special effects for the time even. But yeah, it's just so dull and boring. That movie's like toneless. It's so, I don't know what Bryan Singer was going for. This like it's almost like an art film. It's so weird. But Man of Steel, you have the final battle. In Smallville, and it's him fighting for the people he cares about with his mother. He defeats Zod and all of them in the last 10 minutes in Smallville. The movie ends in Smallville, and then at the end he goes back to Metropolis, which has not been destroyed by that giant machine thing, and we don't get that octopus robot thing, and half of Metropolis isn't destroyed. So the Daily Planet ending makes sense, because the movie has a good last line. It has a really good last line, where she says, "Welcome to the planet, Clark." That's a good line that Goyer wrote. "Welcome to the planet, Clark." Great last line. The problem is the movie doesn't earn it because you're sitting there going, isn't half of Metropolis destroyed? What are they even doing? Wasn't the Daily... I swear I saw that building collapse. Didn't Zod and Superman fly through everything? But if it would have been a Marvel movie, it would have been all about Clark and as a guy, and then the last 10 minutes would have been a fight scene, and it would have had more character development and payoff. When you don't do that, when you focus so much on action, like 45 minutes, like Man of Steel does, then there's no point of even watching the movie anymore. It's just destruction porn. It's literally destruction porn. You know why that explosion in The Dark Knight really works at the hospital? There's not a lot of explosions in The Dark Knight. That's why it works. It's because the movie doesn't start with a bunch of explosions. It doesn't have a crap load. For the most part, it's people talking and Batman detective work and all that. And then when the Joker blows up the building, Christopher Nolan actually blew up a building, and it's a big moment halfway into the movie. And then the Joker goes to blow up the fairies at the end, and they don't blow up. You know, that Christopher Nolan has restraint with that stuff. So when the building blows up, it's a big deal, and he uses it for that great moment with the Joker. But in Man of Steel, once you see 5 buildings collapse, you don't care anymore. You know, you could even say the first Avengers had that problem, but at least with the Avengers, you had all the characters playing. They were bonding. Hawkeye was bonding with Iron Man and Captain America. It was about their characters being friends. Man of Steel, Superman loses all character development. It's literally just him and Zod punching each other. Superman stands and punches at it. I mean, they do it over and over again. I remember being in the theater like, what the hell is this? Why is this whole last 40 minutes just people punching each other? It doesn't even have little moments where it slows down and gets kind of dramatic again or adds some levity. It's just constant. Then there's a little break, and then they come back and fight again. It's like, it's just a pure action film, and that would be fine if it wasn't CGI flying through buildings and crap. It's like, oh my god, it's like watching a Michael Bay movie at that point. It's like the last half hour to any Transformers movie, where it's just a bunch of destruction and buildings following and people, and it's like, what a boring location, too, to have Superman fighting in the city again like that. Like I said, the Metropolis... I mean, the Smallville stuff was way more interesting. It was cool to see him walk downtown Smallville and people, like, hide in their buildings. That was really cool. That was a nice moment. And then they take it to Metropolis and just ruin it. It becomes just, like, way too over the top. Naughty, naughty, naughty. That's the thing, the Avengers, there's so much going on in that scene. Cap saves people, Iron Man goes up in the thing and he gets caught by the Hulk. It's a big moment for Iron Man to sacrifice himself and care about other people. There's a lot going on there. There's so much stuff happening. And yeah, it's less is more, basically. And that's something Marvel does know, and I will give Marvel that forever. They know that less is more. You don't have to have a bunch of special effects. The best Marvel movies, like the first Iron Man or Winter Soldier, are not special effects spectacle demo reels. Most of it's very gritty, character-driven dialogue stuff, humor, and then there'll be an action scene occasionally that's really good. But even the action scenes, there's not that much CGI in them either. Winter Soldier, the big reason a lot of people like it is because it feels grounded. And Marvel's good at that. They're really good at that. All right, people. It's time to get to the box office. So there's a lot to talk about this week. This is pretty freaking crazy. 12 Strong did surprisingly well. I don't think it's a surprise. I actually thought that film would do well. Typically, films about the military, stuff like this does well. Lone Survivor is an example that comes off the top of my head. Then there was that film a few years ago that was directed by the guy who was the DP on Terminator Salvation, the guy that Christian Bale yelled at. He directed like some kind of like first-person shooter military, but they usually do well. So a lot of people thought this film was going to bomb, and I'm like, why would you think a film with Chris Hemsworth would bomb? Michael Shannon, aren't they like hunting down Bin Laden? They're like riding horses with guns hunting down Bin Laden. That sounds like a blockbuster to me. So it performed above expectations. The reason I put it in the list and not Jumanji, or as the title, I guess, not on the list, was just because I've already covered Jumanji 2, and that was the most watched episode of Box Office Addict. It almost has 6,000 hits, so that's a pretty crazy episode. And I haven't really talked about Jumanji much. There really isn't a lot to say about Jumanji except that it's the biggest surprise hit of the year, of 2017 and going into this year. And it's a franchise starter, and it's everything that I thought it could perform as, and it did even better than that. I mean, it's a massive thing. You can't even really give context to the Jumanji thing. There's really nothing to compare it to. For me, even last year, you could be like, well, what about It or something, or Get Out? It's like, no, that really doesn't... I mean, maybe the nostalgia factor of it with the IP, and the IP of the IP thing where like people loved the It miniseries when they were kids, and it just got more popular and held on for years. Maybe Jumanji, we didn't give it enough credit. Maybe the first Jumanji starring Robin Williams, which even for adjusted ticker price inflation only made 200 mil domestic. So this Jumanji's way outgrossing it. But you have to wonder if that film did stay in people's hearts through television and video, and there was a lot of nostalgia, and that carried over, but then this new film kind of became the classic in a box office sense. I'm not talking quality, because I don't think this is a great movie, but it's kind of becoming that classic financially that the original film maybe set out to be. So the first film cost $65 million and only made $100 million domestically. This film cost $90 million, is at $316 million domestically. So you can just see the difference there. But yeah, you got to wonder, is this thing where the IPs from the 80s and 90s, and I know It was a popular book too, but the fact it stayed relevant for so long, that it stayed relevant, that people would still go see the new one. It feels that way with Jumanji. It feels like that premise. Do you guys remember Zathura? Jon Favreau, after he did Elf, he made Zathura, and Zathura like bombed. Zathura did really bad, and I remember seeing that film. Dax Shepard's in that movie, Kristen Stewart. And that movie didn't do well at all. And I actually like Zathura quite a bit. I actually think Zathura's a fun little movie. But yeah, and then it wasn't until Iron Man that he got really big. But, you know, I guess this premise, the game coming to life, or you going into the game, actually worked. It's also weird that Scott Pilgrim bombed so many years ago and this is doing well, or Speed Racer. It makes you kind of wonder if Scott Pilgrim would be a hit now, but it bombed because of the year it came out. It makes you kind of wonder, would Scott Pilgrim have made money now? I don't know. Well, yeah, the first two Terminators are great. Yeah. When you look at the first two Terminator films, you can easily see a shift in how much scale all James Cameron did was remake the first movie with a bigger scale. That's what T2 is. T2 is just a remake of Terminator 1. I don't have an issue with that. I know some people think that's a bad thing. I love that Terminator 2 is a remake of Terminator 1. I think that's awesome. Why change it? Why not just remake that awesome movie you made before and add new special effects? I think that's a great... And he also got to keep some of the ideas he had from... In the original Terminator, Arnold wanted a guy that... I mean, James Cameron wanted a guy that wasn't so big and impressing. He actually wanted a normal-looking guy. I think he even wanted, like, Lance Hendrickson. But then Arnold, he came in and it just worked better. But then with T2, he got Robert Patrick and had him play it more the way he kind of envisioned it in the original movie. So it's very fun. In Aliens and Terminator 2, the main actors become more important than the plot. I mean, yeah, but they're those kind of movies, you know? They're like action blockbusters, so I don't really have an issue with that. You know, Alien is a horror film in space. It's very quiet. There's not too much dialogue. It's all set in the dark. And that's the kind of movie it is. It doesn't really matter who the lead character is. There's some great actors in that movie, like Tom Skerritt, and they don't really do that much. And Terminator, the first one, is about plot. But Aliens as a movie by design, and Terminator... It's kind of like being upset that Robert Downey Jr. takes over Iron Man. It's just the kind of movie it is. Like, I would argue the original cast of Star Wars took over the plot of the movies. I would say Leia, Han, and Luke is the dominant nature of the original, not plot. Especially New Hope. New Hope doesn't even have that good of a plot. Empire's the only one with a really good plot. But, you know, well, I mean, Aliens is kind of an ensemble film, but it's also not at the same time. It's really an ensemble film in the sense that Hicks, Bishop, and Ripley have character arcs and have a lot to do, and maybe Vasquez, but for the most part, I wouldn't really say it's much of an ensemble film. It's mainly about Ripley and the motherhood thing. And Terminator 2, that was an Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle in 1991. Of course he was going to take over them. The movie made the money it did because of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, he was the biggest movie star in the world at that time. He did this. I mean, Total Recall, he does the same thing. You know, it was just that era. You built the movie around Arnold. It was because the 90s was still a big era for the movie star. You know, it happened with Tom Cruise. He would take over a movie all the time. But Aliens, I don't really mind that Ripley's the main character and takes over the movie. I think that's what makes it work. And that's what makes it different from Alien. Because Alien's an ensemble film, and that's what works about it. But Aliens isn't. It's about Ripley. She's the main character now. She really wasn't the main character in Alien. Everyone's a character in Alien. She just ends up surviving at the end. But I wouldn't necessarily call her the main character of Alien. I'd say everyone shares enough screen time. I mean, yeah, well, that's kind of how Weaver is. So as far as I know about Weaver, she's been very controlling on almost all of the Alien films after the original. Apparently, Alien 3, she had a lot of input. Alien 4, she had a lot of input. So that's kind of unfortunate. But you got to give it to Weaver. She's smart. She's a very smart woman. She's very physically able to play those parts. And the sequel probably would have never happened without her. We probably would have never got Aliens if it wouldn't have been for her. So I don't really mind that so much. It's kind of like Terminator 2. If Arnold Schwarzenegger hadn't become such a big star, I don't know if Terminator 2 would have happened. So you have to kind of take that context with it. Well, like, yeah, well, that movie exists because of this person. You know, when they made the original Alien, you know, it was a different time. And I also, I don't know, I feel like Sarah Connor and Arnold get a lot to do in Terminator 2. I think, like, really the weak link to Terminator 2 is Eddie Furlong. Eddie Furlong's like the part that really sucks. Leonardo DiCaprio could have played that part wonderfully, which I would love. I always think in my head if Leo had played fucking John Connor. Oh my god. Right before Titanic, and that would have been around the time of The Quick and the Dead. Could you imagine Leonardo DiCaprio doing the, like, she's not my mom, Todd? Because Eddie Furlong's so bad in that movie. And, yeah, it's almost like, yeah, if you recast that role, the whole movie would work better. Because that part feels so 90s and dated, and his acting is so dated. And Eddie Furlong just wasn't that great of an actor in general. But then I think about Leonardo DiCaprio at like 13 riding around on the motorcycle, and I'm like, that sounds like the most awesome thing ever. Thinking about Leonardo DiCaprio riding the freaking dirt bike and Arnold coming and grabbing him when the thing's, it's like amazing. Like Growing Pains Leo. Oh my god, with the hair and everything. Please, God. What are your thoughts on 2010? I've never seen... You mean the 2001 sequel? With, from the 80s? With Roy Scheider? I remember it's okay. And in fact, I remember there's things about it that I like better than 2001. I think I like the characters more, and I like the dialogue a lot. There's more character development and stories in that movie. I like the book 2010 by Clark. I don't really... The movie's just okay. It's not a bad movie. If anything, it's kind of underrated. There's actually some really good scenes in that movie. And John Lithgow's great. And Hal's amazing in it. They wake Hal up again. And Hal feels bad about what he did in 2001. I can't take Leo seriously, but he was good in Avi. Yeah, but you didn't... Yeah, but what about when he was a boy, though? I'm talking about when he was a kid, like when he did Gilbert Grape and This Boy's Life. He was terrific back then. You can't take Leo seriously now because he's an adult man trying to play a lot of these tough roles and it doesn't work. But he was a terrific kid actor. He was totally believable back in those days. I agree with you. I don't really buy Leo in every role either. I thought he was actually kind of overrated in The Revenant in a lot of movies. I agree with you on that. But he would have killed in Terminator 2. He's pretty much made for blockbusters. One of his best performances is Titanic. He makes that whole movie work because he actually knows how to carry the special effect, because that movie's got terrible dialogue and characterization. But Leo back in the 90s was an amazing kid actor. Go watch This Boy's Life. He's keeping up with De Niro. And then he did Gilbert Grape and stole that movie. And then he was great on Growing Pains, and he was great in The Quick and the Dead. So, yeah, Leo was one of those great kid actors, and he didn't get enough parts when he was a teen. Oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, Kubrick directed the fake moon landings, yes. But I remember liking 2010. I haven't seen 2010 in a long time, so you have to take that. But I remember thinking it was a good movie. Like it was like a 7 out of 10 or something, or like a 3 stars. So that's my thing. But yeah, you got to think about it. If Leo had been John Connor, that would have been so interesting because he would have been set up for James Cameron before Titanic, and then we would have got that double hitter of Terminator 2 and then Titanic. And then maybe Leo would have even been the lead in Avatar instead of the terrible Sam Worthington. I don't know. It's that alternate history thing. We should get back to the box office. Yes, we should. Let's get back to the box office, shall we? Because I keep ignoring it. Okay. But people should go seek it out. This Boy's Life. Leonardo DiCaprio. Very good movie. One of his first films. Anyway, let's go down to the bottom and work our way up, because we've talked about Jumanji a little bit and 12 Strong overperforming. Let's go down to some of the specialty box office, the films. All the Money in the World, directed by Ridley Scott, had a 70% drop this week. It's at $39 million worldwide and $24 million domestic. Now, this film, I believe, cost $50 million with the reshoots that they had to do with Christopher Plummer. I don't want to call this a bomb, but it is. It's not going to make its money back, and I'm assuming with marketing and all that. So, this is actually one of Ridley Scott's better reviewed movies of the last, 10, 15 years. This actually has pretty good reviews. It might get an Oscar nomination or two. And I haven't seen it. I didn't like Alien Covenant at all, if you all know, because I did my infamous Alien Covenant video. But, yeah, after The Martian, what am I saying? The Martian was one of Ridley Scott's best reviewed. I forgot about The Martian. This is Ridley Scott's best reviewed film in years, is The Martian. My bad. But yeah, The Martian was one of his best reviewed films, and financially it was easily his biggest film. But ever since that movie, Alien Covenant and All the Money in the World have both been financially really disappointing. And that's kind of how Ridley Scott is. Every time he does a Prometheus and it makes money, The Counselor bombs. Body of Lies didn't do that well, and it had Leo in it. American Gangster did well. A Good Year was a bomb. Kingdom of Heaven bombed. Matchstick Men didn't do... And Matchstick Men's a great movie, in my opinion. It's one of Ridley Scott's, 5 best movies. I mean, I'm just looking at this list, and all I see is a bunch of movies I don't like. I don't want to go down the Ridley Scott thing again, but it's like, okay, Alien and Blade Runner, great. Legend, sucks. Amazing performance by Tim Curry, great visuals, but terrible movie. Awful mess of a movie. Tim Curry as Darkness, yes. Someone to Watch Over Me is a really bad movie. Black Rain is fun and awesome, but only because it's Michael Douglas and it's so over the top and bad. But I'll give it a pass. Thelma and Louise is a good movie. Here's where we get to the weird stuff. 1492 is one of the single worst films ever made. White Squall it's just mediocre. G.I. Jane is really bad. Gladiator is an overrated, terrible film, and I know a lot of people get mad at me when I say that. I don't agree with you. It's just opinion, people. I'm sorry if you like Braveheart in the Coliseum era. I'm sorry that you like Braveheart with gladiators. That's all it is. And Braveheart's the better movie. Hannibal is one of the single worst sequels ever. Black Hawk Down is just 2.5 hours of shaky cam, with no character development, no arcs, no story, nothing about that. What about you like Dunkirk? Yeah, but Dunkirk wasn't 2.5 hours of shaky cam nonsense. This is like a Michael Bay movie or a Tony Scott movie, and a bad Tony Scott movie, not a good Tony Scott movie. So yeah, I'm on the Black Hawk Down and Gladiator are both insanely overrated. I really don't get the hype for Black Hawk Down. Great cinematography, great sound. But yeah, it's just a mess. It's just like a bunch of people who look the same getting shot at each other running around. I'm not really sure. Hateful Eight, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Alien Covenant was awful. If Ridley Scott really wanted to make a trilogy about the android, why not just make a... Yeah, I don't know why he didn't do the Blade Runner. Actually, Ridley Scott should have made the Blade Runner sequel instead of doing the Aliens, in my opinion. And I like what Denis Villeneuve did, but really, doesn't it make more sense for Ridley Scott to come back and do the next Blade Runner if he's going to tell the story again than to do an Alien prequels? Just in my opinion. And in fact, I think Ridley Scott would be better doing the sequel to Blade Runner than he would have been doing those prequels. Because visually, he's still, like, Prometheus, how that looked was great. I think Prometheus is as good looking as anything Denis Villeneuve's done. But yeah, if he could have got that script by Hampton Fancher, that would have been one of Ridley Scott's best movies. Yeah, Tom Cruise. That's one of the only Tom Cruise movies I don't like either. And I like I'm so biased with Tom Cruise. I like almost all of his movies, and that's one of the only ones I don't like. Can't beat Spartacus. I loved Legend. Tim Curry was side. The soundtrack was glorious. The movie was shot. No, I agree with you. Everything you're saying is true, but it's got a terrible screenplay. It doesn't even have a plot. The acting's really bad outside of Tim Curry, who is wonderful. And every time he tries to... It's just a bad movie. I know he made it after the death of his brother, so he was really depressed. And he wasn't really focused on it. But it's one of those movies you could see that's when Ridley Scott, how he is, when he doesn't have good collaboration. Like he did on Alien and Blade Runner, by the way. He had people... Dan O'Bannon and Walter Hill wrote that screenplay. You know, Hampton Fancher and David Van Peebles worked that screen. You know, Ridley Scott's only great when he has a great script, which is true for a lot of directors, but I don't think he's very good at picking scripts. I wanted to take a vacation in the world of Legend as long as there was no trolls around. The world... I agree. I agree. It's one of the most beautiful movies ever made. It's a beautiful movie. It's a great looking movie. The sets are amazing. The costumes. When I was a kid, I loved it. It definitely, there's a lot about it that's great production wise. Yeah, I totally agree. Finally, someone else who hates Gladiator, although Braveheart isn't. Man, all of my friends dislike Gladiator. I don't really get, like, if you actually go look at reviews for Gladiator, it's not that acclaimed. It really doesn't. Like, let's go check this out. Let's go check a Gladiator. If you go look at its reviews, same with Braveheart. And all of my friends who are film buffs or like indie filmmakers, artists, none of them like Gladiator. They all think it's badly edited, paced, written. It's over the top. It's generic. And that's how... No, and if you go back... Damn it. Hold on. Sorry. Let's get it right. Okay, yeah, let's look at Gladiator 2000. This is the film that won Best Picture. It beat Almost Famous in 2000. It has 76% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 7.2 average. Okay, so when people say, oh, you hate Gladiator, everybody loves... And I'm not saying critics are right. But even at the time this movie wasn't acclaimed. It was loved by audiences who loved the action and spectacle at the time and bought into its epicness and the mess that it is. But it's a total... I mean, I've seen this movie like 10 times and it's a mess. All throughout. Joaquin Phoenix wanting to go out and fight him in the battlefield is one of the single dumbest things ever in a movie. Ever. It's stupid. There's no logic to anything. The backstory with his family is ridiculous. The way it's put together... the pacing's horrible. There's a lack of characterization. It's all held together by Russell Crowe's charisma and cinematography and all that. But yeah, look, the reviews here. And then if you even look top critics, it's got a 70. You know, and it's like these people have this idea in their head that Gladiator was considered this, like, masterpiece. Like here, Gladiator is filled with brilliant filmmaking and features outstanding performances. But it's neither profound enough nor pop enough to be great. It's mournful, serious, beautiful, and, finally... pointless. Exactly. Yeah, it's a pointless film. It's a lifeless film. There's no life to it. It's toneless. It's directionless. It's even this guy got Cole Smithy. He gave it a B. But yeah, it's just. And if you like sword and sandals epics, this isn't even one of the best ones. It just shows you it was the modern one with action scenes. But God, this is no better than a movie like Troy. Or something like that. This is no better than any of those films. This is no better than his recent film, Robin Hood or Exodus. But somehow Gladiator got a pass back in the day. But yeah, I'll never understand the love for that movie. I've been planning a Gladiator video for years. I've been wanting to do like a Plinkett level review of Gladiators forever. I've been thinking about that in my head for the longest time. Hey, Pat, are you excited for the Charles Manson movie? Yes, I am. I'm very excited for that movie. I like that Tom Cruise is being talked about being cast. I think that's awesome. Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate. But yeah, Leo. I don't know if Leo's going to play Manson. Leo is very good in Catch Me If You Can. That's actually one of his best performances. It's a very underrated performance. Actually. But yeah, okay, and then, yeah, Matchstick Men's good. Kingdom of Heaven, the director's cut, is decent, but the original version sucks. A Good Year's an awful movie. American Gangster's just generic. I know a lot of people, once again, think this is a masterpiece. This is one of the most generic crime films ever made. Russell Crowe's character is just a ripoff of every 70s crime movie. It's just Serpico. And Denzel, there's only a few scenes that are really good, like when Denzel shoots Idris Elba in the street. That's amazing. And I don't dislike this movie. I think this is a good movie. I'd probably give this film a 6 or a 7. I think Steve Zalian wrote a decent script and it's a well-made movie. But, like, this film, once again, it has, like, 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. And if you talk to Ridley Scott fanboys, they say this is, like, a crime masterpiece and an amazing movie. And it was great. And it's like, it wasn't. I remember being in the theater and being so disappointed in this movie thinking it was going to be great. And it was so generic. It was like I'd seen that movie 100 times before it came out. There was nothing new about the genre that it went into. And then, yeah, I don't like Body of Lies, obviously, even though it's kind of okay. Robin Hood was awful. I didn't like Prometheus. The Counselor's awful. Exodus is bad. I don't actually like The Martian, but I'm going to have to give that one a pass because everyone else loves it. I think The Martian's overrated. I don't really blame him for that, though. I don't like the script to that movie or the book. Ridley Scott did a fine job. And then, yeah, Alien Covenant, enough said. So, yeah, I don't really see this great filmmaker everyone's talking about. Even if you're just going off his popular films, you have Alien, Blade Runner, Thelma and Louise, Gladiator. There's 4. Black Hawk Down 5. I guess you could say Kingdom of Heaven. He has that fan base now. And then I guess American Gangster you can give a pass. But yeah, for the most part, I don't really see this great filmmaker outside of his early work, which is great. And I think it gives him a pass for life. But I also like consistency. You know? I mean, I think why wasn't he able to keep improving on the things that were developed in Alien and Blade Runner? I don't really know. Although I do think depression and drinking has been very bad for Ridley Scott over how many years that's been going on. I like Red Letter Media, but Jay seems too full of himself and kind of douchey. I mean, I don't know. I think he's got an ego, like he's opinionated. He has, but I don't think that's like a bad thing necessarily. I think that balances it out a little bit, you know. But yeah, I don't really get the Martian hype. I wish I did, but I just don't. Not my kind of movie. Just really bored during it. But I keep ignoring the box office here again. All right. Downsizing, Alexander Payne, a director I love. $37 million worldwide, $68 million budget. This is pretty much a bomb. And speaking of Matt Damon, who was coming off The Martian, he hasn't had a very good... Jason Bourne did well, but he's been in a few movies that didn't perform that well domestically. And this is easily one of Matt Damon... Oh, yeah, and Suburbicon. That was another bomb. This was a bad year for Matt Damon. Thor Ragnarok. Let's see where that's at. Is that still at 850? 851. So that's pretty much wrapped up. Taika Waititi's film. Daddy's Home 2. $179 million. That's pretty much wrapped up its run. We've said enough about that. Disaster Artist is pretty much done now. Nothing down here. Let's move up. Let's see where Wonder's at worldwide. The Steven Chbosky film. It's at $248 million with a $20 million budget. I think this film will get a makeup nomination at the Academy Awards. There was a point I thought Jacob Tremblay was going to get nominated, but I don't think that'll happen anymore. But yeah, that's a big hit. Lady Bird from Greta Gerwig, one of the frontrunners for Best Picture, is at $39 million domestic. Although I will say, now that Shape of Water won the Producers Guild, I will say Shape of Water is the frontrunner. I'd say at this point we have to say Shape of Water will most likely win Picture, Director, Score. I think it's going to be kind of like Birdman, where it wins several. I still think Jay is overrated. Oh, okay. I think Scott is to the point where he's surrounded by yes men. You're probably not wrong, but I also think he's his own yes man, if you know what I mean. Anyway, this is a film that cost, I believe, $10 million, which it did not look like at all. This looked like a film that cost like $3 million to me. This was a really cheap-looking movie for... I mean, I'm not saying $10 million is a big budget, but, like, Get Out cost half of what this movie did. Split cost... And they look way better. Just aesthetically. So I don't really know how Greta Gerwig spent that much. But it's made 39. It's A24's biggest film. But like I said, after the Producers Guild Awards, and I think tonight's the SAG Awards, you kind of have to go with Shape of Water. I thought it was going to be Three Billboards or Lady Bird. But it kind of feels like... I thought Get Out. Get Out's going to be nominated for Best Picture. Get Out's going to be nominated for Picture, Director, and Screenplay at the Oscars and Actor. But I'd say Shape of Water's going to win at this point. Do you like Saoirse Ronan? Yes, I do. I do like Saoirse Ronan. Or is it Saoirse? I'm not quite sure. Is her name Saoirse Ronan or Saoirse Ronan? The spelling throws me off a little bit. But yeah, I'm a big fan of hers. I liked her back in the day, Atonement, and The Lovely Bones is a terrible movie. And she's good in that. I really liked her in Hannah. I thought Hannah was really good. And I think she's even really good in this movie. I think it's a tough role to play. Greta Gerwig's very unlikable, in my opinion. Well, I'm not a big fan of Get Out, but it has 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was a huge hit. So if we're just going off that, it makes sense that it would do well at the Academy Awards. I mean, we're just if we're going off that, how it performed, It's one of the most popular movies of the year. So it's kind of stupid for them to ignore it. Oh, blood money. Oh, blood money. Stop it. Yeah, I really like her. I think she's beautiful, too. She's very uniquely beautiful. A lot of actors just have this traditional kind of beauty or this old Hollywood beauty. Her beauty's very, it's real. She looks like a girl you would see in real life, but in that she almost has things to her face like certain flaws or certain things that make her more beautiful. Kind of like what Evan Rachel Wood has, what makes her so appealing. And it makes her more interesting as a character in movie Saoirse Ronan because of that. That you almost want to get to know her a little bit more because of how she looks. Or I've always felt that way, and I feel like she's just gotten better looking with each movie. Like I remember when she was young, she was pretty, but she was kind of like I don't know, kind of boyish and tall. And then this older she's getting, she's kind of growing into herself. And I think when she's like 30, she'll be really everything will be all around. I really like her in that movie too. That Nick Hornby wrote, the great Nick Hornby. Brooklyn. That's a very good movie. I don't know why you were placed in timeout. I did not put you in timeout, so I'm sorry. Surely Paddington 2 should have clean sleep. I mean, it's the best reviewed film in Rotten Tomatoes history. Um, yeah, she is cute. Yeah, she definitely is. There's something about her that's appealing. I'm not even quite sure what it is. Um, Call Me By Your Name, 1.5 million, increase of 111%. This film's actually picking up some momentum now, not in the award season, even though I think it's a crime when this is going to lose Best Song. Remember Me from Coco's going to win, and why are they not putting in Visions of Gideon? They're putting in Mystery of Love, which is not as good as Visions of Gideon's a much better song, and it would have won the Oscar. Anyway, this film cost 3.5 million. It stars Timothée Chalamet, Michael Stuhlbarg, Armie Hammer, which I kept calling him Stuhlberg in my review, so I feel bad. It's Stuhlbarg. Wonderful character actor. Kind of reminds me of Robin Williams a little bit. If you guys know what I'm talking about, like Robin Williams in Awakenings or something like that. Oh, I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Thank you. Oh, I love Mary Elizabeth. She's goddess. Amazing. I was so happy she got to be in Cloverfield because it was so many years. I was like, why is nobody putting her in a horror movie? She's like the best scream queen ever. Why isn't she in? She could so be the Ripley. She's so good. Like the Thing remake. Casting her was genius, and that movie's awful. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is so good. She's so freaking good. And it just isn't this movie about. It kind of is weird. Like I do think about this movie. What if this was a straight film about like a 20-something-year-old guy banging a teenager? Would people have been as accepting? I know this stuff happens. You know it. I've had friends in my life when they were teenagers, they slept with older people. I'm not going to tell who they are, but you hear those stories. I didn't do that, but yeah, it is like, oh, it's two gay guys, so it's amazing. But you're kind of sitting there like, these parents are being a little too passive to this. Like, it's okay, son, go have sex with that older guy. It's all right, we don't care. Yeah, I mean, if Armie Hammer's wanting to grind up on you, you can't really say no. You just have to go with it. They're both good looking. Him and Timothée Chalamet, they're both very good looking in the movie. The way they're lit's wonderful. But yeah, 9.2 million, $3.5 million budget. I don't know if this film's going to make too much money. It went the widest it has this week in 815 theaters, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. But not doing horrible. God, let me find my place. Ferdinand, that one's pretty much gone now. 80 million, let's say. 234 million worldwide. From the director of the Ice Age franchise and the Rio movies. Which his audience is pretty much not domestic anymore. He's much more into the international. He's kept his career around because his movies have made so much internationally. Molly's Game from Aaron Sorkin, written and directed, 55% drop, 24 million. This has actually done better than I thought it would have done entirely, so I can't really call this bad, just for the fact that I thought this movie would have never even made like 15 million, so that's overperforming in my eyes. Now, I've been talking about Coco a lot. How the film cost $200 million and it really didn't perform up to par domestically. Had a great opening weekend, 50 million, 71 on the holiday, and it didn't really hold that well, especially compared to other animated films. I mean, if you think of, in particular, a lot of modern Disney ones, even Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Moana, domestically, this didn't really perform as well. It had steeper drops, but having said that, and this is a $200 million film, so it does cost more than your typical Disney animated film, which the budget's typically around $150 million. Having said that, this film was doing really great internationally, and it's now made $455 million there. So it's at $655 million worldwide. So even with a $200 million budget, counting marketing, distribution, and all that, this film has had to have made a profit, and a good one. Domestically, it didn't do that great. And how much the studio gets from the revenue, I doubt they made a lot of profit domestically. I'm sure they broke even around there a little bit. Probably not even so, because they wouldn't get the 100% of the ticket price, so they couldn't have broke even here. But because the film, I've heard rumors the film cost like $230 million, but still, this film looks like it could make $700 million worldwide. So this is successful. It's past Moana worldwide and a lot of other Disney films. So, and for Pixar, you know, it's one of their more successful films in the last year. I mean, it's not Finding Dory or that, you know, but no one expected this to make $1 billion. You got your feelings hurt for me having an opinion. Hey, not sure. Not sure. He doesn't. I made him a mod, and I think he accidentally does that, because if he puts an ad on you or types something, it puts you in timeout. He's not. I don't think he's doing that on purpose. That's happened before. He doesn't mean to do it. He's my normal moderator, Bathory, is not here right now. So that was probably just a mistake. I don't think he did that on purpose. But yeah, yeah. Don't take it as Blood Money. Don't put people in timeout. Come on. Learn the controls, man. Damn it! It's not. You can play a video game. You can moderate a chat on YouTube. All right, so Coco, yeah, way overperformed worldwide. Did really good. 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. This is another film that's doing great, and a film I want to watch soon. I've had a lot of people say this is a masterpiece from Martin McDonagh, who is the director of In Bruges and 7 Psychopaths. That's funny. 7 Psychopaths, 3 billboards. In Bruges should have been called 1 Bruges. Anyway, this went wide and opened to $4.3 million, but so far it's made $32 million domestic and $43 million worldwide. This stars Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell, Frances McDormand, Peter Dinklage, John Hawkes. I mean, what a great cast of actors right there. All great character actors, too. Frances McDormand's the front runner for Best Actress. Sam Rockwell is the front runner for Supporting Actor. We're going to have to wait to see how the SAGs go. But yeah, I really want to see this movie. A lot of people are putting it in their top 10 and saying it's great, and it sounds like my kind of movie. I hear it's like a mix of Fargo with other types of things. I hear it's the little Coen brothers and all that, so I'm excited to see it. And I like the director. I really like In Bruges. And his brother made a film I really liked called like The Guard or something, starring Brendan Gleeson. That was a very good film. I can't remember the name of it, but it was very funny and good. And it was also kind of like a Coen brothers movie. There's also kind of this Fargo aspect to it. Shape of Water, the current Best Picture frontrunner, after winning the Producers Guild last night, which is one of the best places to see if how you're going to perform Best Picture. This is the guy who doesn't like Jay, though. I mean, hey, dude, you know, he doesn't like Jay. That's cool. At least he didn't say anything about Rich. You know, if he said something about Rich Evans, you can kick him out. That's fine. If he attacks Rich, but he could talk about Jay or Mike. That's fine. Just leave Rich Evans alone. His laugh, every time he laughs, an angel gets its wings. Perhaps Jay has recently become involved in the Hollywood harassment scandal. I don't think so. But anyway, this film's made $30 million domestic by the great Guillermo del Toro, who seems like the front runner now, a lock for director. I thought Christopher Nolan was going to win it for months. I wasn't expecting Shape of Water to get so much momentum and all that. You know, I didn't expect it would be his best reviewed film since Pan's Labyrinth. I was kind of going off the Hellboy 2, Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak del Toro. I still have yet to see this movie. I've heard mixed things, but I am excited. I do like Guillermo del Toro. I like his films that aren't like American comic book blockbusters. I like more of these kind of movies. I think this film cost $20 million, so it doesn't have a big budget. $30 million domestic's not bad. It's not doing great either. A lot of the Best Picture movies this year, a lot of the indie films really aren't doing much above this. But hopefully at the international box office, it could pick up some momentum. But yeah, it won the Producers Guild last night. So I don't believe it was nominated at SAG. It might have been. But I'd still say right now, if you're putting your Oscar bets down, Shape of Water for picture, director, and Desplat winning score. I, Tonya, from the director of Lars and the Real Girl, 14.6 million. This film's picking up momentum. It's in 800 theaters. It did 3 million this weekend. Yes. And Allison Janney is picking up momentum. Everyone thought Laurie Metcalf was going to win Best Supporting Actress. Every time Rick laughs in a movie, I can't help but chuckle. Oh, it's amazing. If he said anything about Rich, he would be out. Yeah, if you say stuff about Rich, you're out of here. I will not put up with it. You leave Rich alone. But yeah, it's, this film's doing really well overall. But I, Tonya, yeah, that's what's doing well. And Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird was the front runner, and then out of nowhere, Allison Janney won that Golden Globe, and now the momentum's on her side. And we're gonna have to see how SAG goes. But I really like Allison Janney, and I've heard she steals this movie. Like her, Margot Robbie, and them are what makes the whole movie work. I really like Laurie Metcalf a lot, and I loved her in Roseanne, and I like her. I think she's the only part of Roseanne that's actually really good. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. She could still win. The race isn't over. I'll put it that way. But it's a close race. Darkest Hour, Gary Oldman, Joe Wright film about the era of Dunkirk. I don't know if this takes place like right after Dunkirk or right before. I'm not sure the timeline of this movie. I think it's taking place during Dunkirk or something. Yeah, 41 million domestic. This film's way performed over my expectations. I thought this film would be lucky to make 10, 15 million. This has outgrown Shape of Water. This is past Lady Bird now. It's outgrows 3 Billboards. It's outgrown so many movies I thought would get way more attention. It's at 61 million worldwide. I don't know what the budget is for this movie. I have no idea. I've heard acclaim for the cinematography. The guy who shot this is the guy who shot Amelie, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. He's probably my favorite current living cinematographer. I'd actually say he's the best cinematographer in the world, in my opinion. I'd actually put him above Deakins. I know that's crazy, but I'd say his work, whenever I see it, is the best cinema. Even in his Tim Burton films he works on, which I don't like. He worked on a couple Tim Burton movies, and I hated the movies, but the cinematography was amazing. I love his lighting. He's so great at lighting. And hey, David. Welcome. Or Davis, my bad. Hey, Davis, welcome to the chat, man. Everyone says Goldman is an amazing actor, but this is a case of ridiculous makeup and a ridiculous attempt at impersonation. I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know. But I did hear it's just Gary Oldman yelling for 2 hours. Which sounds... But I can't think of the cinematographer's name right now. He's a foreign cinematographer, but he's a... God, he shot Amelie, and it was amazing. But he also shot... I know Half-Blood Prince, which is the best-looking Harry Potter film. He doesn't work too often, and he worked on Dark Shadows, and he shot a couple other movies that I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But God, amazing work. One of the best DPs in the world. It's like him, Deakins, Emmanuel Lubezki, the guy who shoots for Chan-wook Park. But yeah, I really like Gary Oldman. I mean, he's deserved an Oscar for years. He deserved an Oscar as Sid Vicious. He's deserved an award for a long time now. That guy's been a chameleon of an actor for a long time. Even till this day, that performance as Sid is one of the single greatest performances I've ever seen. Sid and Nancy's just one of the best movies I've seen. The movie's amazing. One great scene after another. The great Alex Cox, who made Repo Man. All right, Pitch Perfect 3, 3.1 million. This is disappointing in comparison to the previous film, which made 187 million domestic and like 250 million worldwide. But having said that, this is still a successful movie. A $45 million budget, 100 million domestic, $68 million foreign, 168 million worldwide. It certainly made a profit. I don't see Pitch Perfect 4 happening. It does seem like the franchise. Mainly because the second film was so disappointing. You could call the first one a modern classic. I don't like the Pitch Perfect series, but that first movie was a Mean Girls thing. It came out, it only made about 65 mil domestic. It made like 100 million worldwide. And then on DVD, on YouTube, that Cup song, that got so big. So when Pitch Perfect 2 came out, I mean, Pitch Perfect's a movie where like, all of the girls have seen it. Everyone that's below 25 has seen it. And, yeah, it just got to that point where, yeah, the sequel had all this hype. But I don't think people liked the sequel as much, and I think that affected the third film. Also, look out for that coming up with Episode 9. Oh, Gary Oldman in True Romance is amazing. He's the best wigger ever. Amazing. I also believe he's conservative. So, win there. You think Chalamet might take Oldman's Oscar? I think it's possible. If Oldman wins the SAG, no. If the SAG doesn't go to Oldman, yes. I thought Timothée Chalamet had a real good shot, but it didn't happen. I put Oldman on par with the costume chameleon types like Johnny Depp and Tim Curry. See, I disagree. I don't think Johnny Depp's that good. I think Gary Oldman's a much better actor than him and Tim Curry. I think Johnny Depp's a performer. I don't really think he's much of an actor. I think he's good in Ed Wood, Gilbert Grape, and the first Pirates, and a couple other movies. He's like good in Nightmare on Elm Street, obviously for the time and all that. But yeah, I don't really think he's in the class of Gary Oldman at all. God, I'm just thinking about Gary Oldman playing Hunter S. Thompson, and it's just a better movie. It's like, holy crap, that's a much better movie. I think he's conservative. I'm not sure. I don't see Anna Kendrick having much success. See, I love Anna Kendrick. I think she's going to be a huge... I think she should have been Belle in Beauty and the Beast. I think she should have been Belle and not Emma Watson, because Emma Watson's voice was off and she wasn't right. Anna Kendrick would have killed in that role. What are your thoughts on Chris Stuckman? Generic, 5-minute talking to the camera, not really saying anything of substance. He seems like a really nice guy. I mean, I'm sure if I met him, we'd have a good time talking about movies and stuff. He seems like a really nice guy, and you can't deny his success. He's the most successful, like, movie reviewer. You could say it's Doug Walker Channel Awesome, but, like, it's really only Nostalgia Critic in the occasional, like, top 10 list. Like, Chris Stuckman just reviews random stuff and it gets a million hits. Like, he can review anything and get a lot of hits. So he really did great. But yeah, I'm not too big on Chris Stuckman at all. Yeah, he's just, whenever you see him do analysis or do anything like that where he does in-depth or he tries to, it's really generic. It's like, God, dude, it's so basic. Yeah, and compared to so many other bloggers on YouTube and film channels, it's just really, I don't get why he's the top. It must be a lot of teenagers watch his stuff or people who just want to get someone to generically give them an opinion. Be like, I like the cinematography. I like the acting. I like the pacing. 8 out of 10. Or for him, it'd be like a B. Yeah, it's banal. Yeah, it's just, it's vapid. There's nothing really there, and I don't really get the appeal of it. But I'm not knocking him. I'm just not a fan. I think he seems like a good guy. Oh man, that whole the guy with the glasses crew, all of them. Jesus Christ. Todd in the Shadows, all of them. Ridiculous people. Ridiculous. Don't forget about Jeremy Johns. Yeah, but at least Jeremy Johns can make a joke occasionally. Like, at least he has kind of a funny sense of humor, and he somewhat can be, like, harsh. But he's boring, too. I don't disagree. As Ralph the Movie Maker said, Jeremy Johns just goes and reads the Rotten Tomatoes consensus, and that's his review for a movie. Who are your favorite movie reviewers? I like Dan Murrell, Roth Cornett, and John Campia. You mean like currently alive film critics? A.O. Scott from the New York Times, Michael Phillips for the Chicago Tribune, I believe, and they actually co-hosted At the Movies at one point together. Christopher Knoll, who actually had the website filmcritic.com, is a terrific critic that's forgotten about today. He's one of my favorite film. He could get a review in just a little brief paragraph. He could in like 3 or 4 sentences, he could give you a review of a movie and it'd be perfect. So concise. I grew up in his reviews a lot. On YouTube, yeah, it's pretty much just Red Letter Media. I don't even really like Ralph the Movie Maker's reviews much anymore, but I do agree with him on what the best movie of the year was, so I have to give him that. Yeah, what's that one guy's name? ER? He did that great Get Out review. He's pretty great. He's an edgelord. Spoonie is a good film critic, man. Spoonie was an amazing... He's still a good film critic. Go watch Spoonie's review for Last Jedi. It's amazing. I miss Spoonie, man. I miss the Spoonie experiment. I hate that he just live streams now. And because, man, Spoonie, he used to make those great video game reviews with the editing, and they were so informative and funny. And, man, when he did when he would review a movie, I'd always go watch his movie reviews on his website. Like, I was obsessed with Spoonie. Him and his brother would sit there and review movies. He was harsh on so many films. I mean, he knew when a film was crap. His Kingdom of the Crystal Skull review, he like came home and he's eating Taco Bell and he just saw it. It was amazing. I haven't seen much of Mr. Sunday's movie, so I'm gonna have to. I can't really answer that. What are your thoughts on the critic Mark Kermode? I've read some of his reviews. They seem all right. Dan Merrill. Yeah, I'm not real. I kind of hate Dan Merrill. He's a terrible film critic. Yeah, Dan Merrill. He's the guy that always wins movie fights because Andy always gave him a win, even though he would give really generic, boring arguments where he just looked up stuff on IMDb. Um, yeah, Dan Merrill I don't think's a good... I think Dan Merrill's kind of a good editor and guy to have on stuff to kind of oversee things. I think he's a very practical guy, but yeah, Dan Merrill's like... He's about as boring as everyone else on Screen Junkies outside of like Hal. Hal's the only one that's kind of interesting. Spoonie's brother killed a guy. Yeah, I've seen the Mr. Medicure videos too. I know. The guy with the glasses, Odyssey, is crazy. It's a crazy saga. Um, yeah, I kind of got sick of the fake geek girl thing. The fake geek girl thing's definitely my most hated thing about YouTube. Like how every chick on Screen Junkies and Collider, I'm a geek girl. Look at me. I love every Star Wars movie and every director, and I'm going to sit here and talk about how much I love movies, even though I've never seen a film that came out before 1985. And remember those terrible movie fights they would have, where they would just bring the girls on and they would just debate Disney movies? Because they knew they couldn't say, what's your favorite foreign film from the 80s? Because they all wouldn't know. None of them would have an answer. They'd sit around and they'd say Amadeus or something was their favorite foreign film from the 80s. They'd be like, oh, Amadeus was my favorite. I'll tell you why I'm emerging. I'm the best reviewer. That's I'm the best reviewer on YouTube. Damn it! If it's not Red Letter Media, it's me. That's it. Love Spoonie's Highlander reviews. Oh my god, totally. Yeah, no, Spoonie was great. I'm a big old school Spoonie fan. He got burned out a while back. Haven't seen anything new. Oh, dude, he screwed over all the people that gave him money on Patreon. He ran his channel into the ground. He has 115,000 subscribers and he can't even bring in like 10,000 hits anymore. I get more hits than Spoonie. Okay, and Spoonie was like internet royalty at one point. Royalty. Yes, you're right. We should get back to the box office. I have watched Jack's movie reviews. Yes, I have. All right. Phantom Thread from Paul Thomas Anderson. This is his best performing movie in ages. I'm really excited for this movie. I think I'm going to like this movie just from what I read about it because it's that Daniel Day-Lewis factor. He co-wrote a lot of this movie with PTA. He worked on this from the early stages, and they were kind of writing it and working it out together. So, as someone who's an obsessive Daniel Day-Lewis fan and likes every performance he's ever given, I even if I'm kind of mixed on PTA's recent work, I was not a big fan of The Master. I like it. I hate Inherent Vice. I think that's an awful movie. I love There'll Be Blood. I like Punch Drunk Love. I love Magnolia and Boogie Nights. Those are two of my favorite movies ever. And Hard Eight's a great movie, in my opinion. It's kind of unfinished, and that kind of hurts it, but it shows the promise that would lead on to other things. I was recently watching A Dinner for Five, which is the show that Jon Favreau used to have in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was where they would get a bunch of writers, creators together, and they would just sit down and have a dinner and have a conversation. It was a lot like a podcast. It was just people talking like a pod, and they would talk about anything. I mean, the conversations would get so personal. And I was watching one the other day with Philip Baker Hall, and he was talking about Paul Thomas Anderson, how Paul Thomas Anderson used to get him coffee. He was the coffee kid. And he loved Philip Baker Hall. He knew the movies he was in. And if you don't know Philip Baker Hall, his career kind of was crappy. He didn't really have a good career. And he was an old man. And PTA was like, man, I know you are. You're great. He goes, you're amazing. And they would sit there and talk all the time. And then Paul Thomas Anderson came in one day and he said, he was like 19 years old, 20, and he looked like he was 15. And he told Philip Baker Hall, like, hey, can you read this? I wrote this. And it was his first short film, which kind of became what Sydney is, if you go back. It's a wonderful short film, too. And he gave it to Philip Baker Hall, and Philip Baker Hall said, this must be when it was like when you first got, like, Shakespeare or something, like how great the writing was. And it's a crazy story to think about, right? Here's an actor who never really hit it big. That's this amazing actor, this great character actor who should be way more famous at that time, and he's not. And then PTA's this kid who's getting coffee. He's like an intern. And he meets this guy, and he knows who he is because he's a film buff. And then he writes something, and he says, I got to cast you. You're great. And he gives Philip Baker Hall this role in a short film. Then it becomes Sydney. And then Philip Baker Hall gets this new resurgence of a career. He shows up in Boogie Nights. He's in Magnolia. And then he's cast for the rest of his life, and he's considered one of the great character actors. All because of Paul Thomas Anderson. That's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And that relationship together Um, is really something. And Magnolia, I think Phil Baker Hall gives a transcendent performance. But yeah, it's a great. That's a great. I'd recommend go watch that show. There's episodes with Kevin Smith that are really good. I think people like Kevin Smith is better than he. Oh, I agree. Kevin Smith is better at talking about movies than he is making them. Absolutely, 100%. But anyway, Inherent Vice had a great opening weekend and limited release because of that trailer that looked really good. And then it didn't perform too well after that. It only made $14 million. This was a film that cost like $30 million. The Master was a film that cost $35 million. It opened really well, $4.3 million. I think the screen average at the time was really high. 5,000 there, but it had that 147,000 average back in its limited opening. So everyone thought this film was going to do well and win a bunch of Oscars, and it got great reviews, but it only got acting nominations for the 3 leads, nothing else, and it bombed. This was the next bomb. That producer girl, what's her name? Megan Ellison. She's produced all of PTA's recent films, and they've all bombed. She produced American Hustle, which was a hit, and Zero Dark 30 was a hit, and Her did okay, but Foxcatcher, Terminator, Genesis, Everybody Wants Somes were all bombs. But she's not a bad... Yeah, but she... she's the Master. I guess I thought she produced all of his recent films. Maybe she didn't produce the stuff after that. But this movie, on the other hand, which is in 896 theaters, made 3.3 million on its wide opening weekend. It's made 6.1 million. Now, I do believe this film also cost $35 million because they keep giving Paul Thomas Anderson $35 million. I'm not really sure why they keep doing that. Like Tarantino, I get how he gets a big budget because his movies can make $100 million now. And $35 million isn't a big budget, but Paul Thomas Anderson can't even bring in $20 million anymore. You know. And let's remember the movies he makes are all talking about movie. Exactly. The only time Kevin Smith was a good filmmaker was when he directed his friends, and they all just had conversations that were things that he wrote based off the real conversations he had. Once he ran out of the conversations he had with his friends in high school and in his early 20s, his movies went to crap. Once he actually started having to write screenplays that weren't just, here's dialogue that I had with my friends when I was in high school, which is exactly, that's all Clerks is and Chasing Amy and Mallrats. It's just dialogue from his real life. Once he ran out of that, yeah, he's not a very good writer. And he's not a good director at all, really. None of his films are that well directed. I'm with Bruce Willis on the story, the cop-out story. I think Kevin Smith, really think about that Bruce Willis story. Because it frames Bruce Willis as the bad guy, and everybody hates Bruce Willis, right? Okay, think about this. This is the story Kevin Smith tells. He tells a story where he gets hired for this movie, this studio movie. He's never made a movie that with the budget this big, $30 million. Every film he's made before has cost like $10 million, if not less. And then he's working on this big studio film. Bruce Willis comes in, and then Bruce Willis asks him at some point. He asks him, he says, hey, what lens are we using in this scene? And Kevin didn't know. He said, I don't know, that one that puts you in this box. And Bruce Willis goes, what do you mean? He goes, what lens is it? What are we shooting in? I want to know what the lens is. Kevin Smith had to go ask his cinematographer what the lens was and then come tell Bruce Willis. And Bruce Willis goes, you don't know your lenses? And Kevin Smith tells this story as if Bruce Willis is in the wrong here, being the bad guy, and he's being mean to Kevin. If you know anything about filmmaking, and I mean the basics, I mean 1 year of film school at all, as a director, the one thing you should know above most other things is your so many things though, like knowing your lenses, know how to cut, know the terminology, know what the shots are, know the words. And Kevin Smith talks about like he's this professional director, and yet he never learned his lenses. He never learned. He was in his 40s when he made Cop Out, and he still didn't know what lenses he was using. Why would Bruce Willis at that point ever respect that guy as a filmmaker? Would you? If you were making a big studio film, if your director didn't know what lens, I mean, that's like an actor not remembering his lines, or the sound editor or the person who makes sounds not knowing how to record. I mean, it's just something that you should know. It's a simple question. It's an easy question for a director. And Bruce started questioning him on these things, and Kevin Smith didn't know anything. He didn't know anything about movies. He didn't know anything about. He knows a lot about movies when he talks. He's a great storyteller. He's a wonderful reviewer when he talks about films and breaks them down. He's a wonderful talker. He's got the gift of gab. He's a great comedian. He's great at talking to audiences. But man, when he starts writing a script and gets behind a camera, that all goes away. And you notice whenever Kevin's telling stories, he's telling stories about his real life, and that's why they're so good. He can't write fiction. He's a horrible fiction writer. Every time he's wrote something that's fictional, it's really terrible. Red State's awful. Yoga Horses is awful. Tusk is awful. Those are all fiction movies. Dogma's really weak in a lot of ways from the writing standpoint. And he ripped a lot of that movie off from Neil Gaiman. But if you look at the films that people like Chasing Amy, that just really happened to him. That's his life. Clerks is his life. Even Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, that only kind of works because it's everyone together and it's a bunch of jokes. It doesn't really have much of a plot. Like, he's not a very good writer-director. It's so weird because he could tell a story and it's wonderful, but he can't do it in a film. And, yeah, he always tries to say, like, Bruce Willis is evil and treated me bad, but it's like, yeah, but he was so happy to be making a movie with Willis. Yeah, but you should know your lenses. You should know your lenses. He's a director. I mean, I'm sorry. That's so embarrassing. Kevin tells that story, and it's embarrassing. It's like you got hired by a major studio, and you didn't know what you were even shooting. He just had it in his head what it was. He didn't even get the time. I mean, that's insulting to a guy like Bruce Willis who's worked with John McTiernan or Quentin Tarantino or even made The Sixth Sense. Like, it's embarrassing. You know, it's like, wait, what? You know, and he's like, Tracy Morgan, and Cop Out's just bad. Even if Bruce Willis had been good in that movie, it's not a very good movie. It's a bad script. And yeah, Kevin, I get why he was excited. I get that Bruce Willis still didn't act with good tact. He should still act professional on a movie, but how can you respect the movie you're on, the set you're on, if the director doesn't know what he's doing? I mean, I'm sorry. That's of course it was that way. I believe Kevin Smith when he talks about Bruce Willis being a total douche on set, because that was around the same time Willis was being a dick to everybody, like in those interviews. I mean, I agree. Yeah, but Philip Baker Hall's career was crap. He was a very small role in The Rock. He didn't do anything. I mean, he was a no-name actor. He was like a very small supporting actor. Nobody really knew Philip Baker Hall. After PTA cast him in Sydney, then he got really big roles, and then he became a very famous character actor. Before he, like back in the 90s, pre Sydney, Philip Baker Hall will even tell you, like, his career was crazy. He didn't have a lot of money. He wasn't a consistently working actor. He couldn't get a lot of work. He had a very bad, because he's a great actor. He deserved a lot. He deserved to be leading movies. He was a lead actor or a big supporting role, and he was just getting these little roles. Sty Stallone even booted Willis from Expendables 3 because Willis was getting hard to work with. Yeah, but all of these movies we're talking about are bad movies. Expendables 3 is an awful movie with bad direction and bad writing. They go up to Bruce Willis and say these terrible lines of dialogue. I mean, am I the one to think Bruce Willis might just have standards? Like Edward Norton or something? Think about how good he is in Looper. How good his acting is in that movie. Is it maybe because Rian Johnson knew his lenses and could answer questions? And it wasn't some bore... I mean, the Expendables films are lazy as hell. I mean, every time Bruce Willis is good in a movie, it's usually a good movie. He's really good in Die Hard. He's really good in Die Hard 3. He's really good in Sixth Sense, Unbreakable. They're good movies. Every time he's in a movie that he doesn't seem to give a crap, and you hear those stories, they're usually bad movies. So I'm under the impression that Willis is on a set and like, this movie sucks, and I don't want to be part... You deserve more money if you're on a bad movie. I mean, they even talk about this with Die Hard 4. Die Hard 4 is pretty crappy. And you hear the things he was trying to fight for, and they're legitimate things. When Kevin Smith says, like, no, he wants there to be more explaining of the bad guy and more going on. And he even says, like, Oliphant's playing it like a pussy. Like, to me, it just sounds like Bruce Willis worked with very top-tier directors, and now he's working with people that are basically amateurs. I mean, Sly Stallone went from being a good director to the first Expendables being awful, and the third one wasn't even directed by him. I don't think Willis has standards judging by his latest DTV avalanche. I mean, that's a fair point, but you have to understand, okay, let's just say this, right? Because you're on a set, and you're on a set, you know the movie's going to be bad. You know Expendables 3 is going to be bad. You know Cop Out's going to be bad. I mean, it's hard not to get mad. I mean, I would get mad if I was on a movie set and I knew the movie was going to suck and the people working on it were hacks, and Sly Stallone sitting there asking me to say terrible 80s dialogue from back in these movies to have I mean, it's awful. It's embarrassing. I mean, I'm sorry that Bruce Willis is the only one who's like, Sly should have been mad. Arnold should have been mad about that movie. Everyone should have been mad and said, why are we making this terrible film that only Antonio Banderas is good in? You know, I mean, why would Bruce Willis respect Kevin Smith? He gets this director. That's the point. Kevin Smith is supposed to impress him. And then he asked him, I mean, look how good Bruce Willis is in both Looper and in the Wes Anderson movie. He's great in Moonrise. He's great in both of those movies, and they came out the same year. Could it be that those directors knew what they were doing and they could answer questions Bruce Willis was asking? And maybe they actually... They knew their lenses and what they actually had an idea of what... And I'm not even a big Looper fan, but, like, still, it's well made. Could it be that Rian Johnson and Wes Anderson just, you know, Bruce Willis respected them and he doesn't treat a director he doesn't respect with kindness? Maybe that's just my theory. Maybe that's why he's so good in Pulp Fiction and not so good in other movies. Like Striking Distance. If Willis had high standards, he wouldn't have signed onto the Expendables to begin with. I enjoy all the Expendables movies, but they're quintessentially done fun popcorn flicks. I think that's the same problem lies with George Lucas, is that he got total control. People realized they weren't in the good in the first... That's the thing, like, when you're on a movie you know sucks, I just can't imagine it's hard to keep a good attitude. You know, I really don't see how you can keep a positive attitude when your director doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, you'd be miserable. You'd be sitting there going, oh, I'm making a bad movie. Yes, that's the thing. That's the thing. Rian Johnson's a good director. I don't think he's a great writer, but he is a good director. And he knows the technical aspects of film. And it's just, yeah, every time Bruce Willis is in a good movie, as far as I remember, it's usually a pretty well-made movie. And when he's not good in a movie, it's a pretty bad movie. But anyway, this is Paul Thomas Anderson's most successful film in a long time. $6.1 million. It cost $35 million. And that's what I was just saying. I just don't get how this guy gets a big budget. How does he get $35 million when none of his films make their money back? None of them. He hasn't had a film make any profit since, like... God, I think... Magnolia didn't even make a lot of money. I think it's only been Boogie Nights. I mean, I love PTA, but I don't get it. But yeah, like... Let's look at Bruce Willis's career, right? Extraction, Rock the Casbah, all bad. Frank Miller, Sin City 2, bad. Red 2, bad. G.I. Joe Retaliation, bad. And he's terrible in all of those movies. A Good Day to Die Hard, bad. But then he's really good in Looper, and it's a decent movie. He's really good in Moonrise Kingdom. He's not good in any of these movies. Surrogates and Cop Out. He's not that good, but they're not good movies. Live Free or Die Hard. He's pretty good in that movie. Perfect Stranger was a bad movie. Alpha Dog. He's actually decent in that. These are all pretty bad movies. Lucky Number 11 he's pretty good in, and he's actually good in 16 Blocks. He's great in Sin City. It's a pretty good movie. You keep going down, and yeah, the only movies I can think of that he's not... Yeah, these are all just bad movies. The whole 10 Yards, Tears of the Sun. Well, when you sign up for a movie, you might think it's a good movie, and then once you start filming, you're like, oh, crap. But yeah, like, he's terrific, and his best movie's like Unbreakable. And that has a lot to do with the directors, too, but that just shows you that the direction wasn't that good. Like, Kevin Smith did not know how to direct Bruce Willis. That is the fault of Kevin Smith, not Bruce Willis. Why didn't Kevin Smith rise to the challenge and take it? No, what he did was he goes on around after he made the movie and he complains about Bruce Willis and talks crap on him. He talks the same crap about Timothy Olyphant, who is an asshole, but it's like, hey dude, I mean, I hate to tell you, like, you're not that good of a filmmaker. That's why they're giving you crap. You're on a professional movie set and you don't know what you're doing. That's a valid reason to be mean to a filmmaker. I think it is. At least Michael Bay knows his damn lenses. He knows what he's doing when he shoots. It's terrible, but he knows what he's doing. Oh man, Hudson Hawk. Great. I love the scenes where they're singing in Robbing Places. It's amazing. Allison Janney won at SAG. Okay, then Allison Janney is winning the Oscar. It's a lock now. Allison Janney is winning Best Supporting Actress. Yeah, Sin City's real good. That's the thing about it. Willis is one of those actors that feeds off the talent of the filmmaker. He's just one of those types of actors. He's not an actor that's going to be great in a movie if the material's not good. And that to me is a reflection of the filmmaker, not necessarily Bruce Willis. That doesn't mean Bruce Willis isn't a jerk and hard to work with, but if other people are able to get great performances out of him despite that, then you should be able to too. That's my argument. Why did Wes Anderson get a good performance out of him? Why did Rian Johnson get a good performance out of him and no one else can? I think it's how you handle them. You have to show them that you're good enough and you can direct them and keep... I mean, Bruce Willis is a big star. You know, I get that he doesn't want to be told what to do. I know people hate hearing that stuff, but sometimes being an a-hole is the right way to be. It's how good movies get made. Edward Norton's an a-hole, and he was in great films for years. People get mad like, oh, he wanted to make the movie better. He's a jerk. He disagreed with the director on a bad idea. It's like, yeah, that's part of the process. Just like Mark Hamill disagreeing with Rian Johnson. It's part of the process. Actors struggle with the director. It's the job of the director to overcome that and make it good. Oh, Moonlighting's terrific. Yes, but it's called Sydney. Yes. The original title was Sydney, and then they changed it to Hard 8. Paul Thomas Anderson calls it Sydney, though. It's I think they call it Sydney now. I don't think it's Hard 8 anymore. It was Hard 8, but I don't know if... I think they did change it recently, but yeah, I call it Sydney. He was a great TV actor, you're right. Bruce Willis was kind of like a great TV... He should have never really become a movie star. The thing that happened was Die Hard was such a great movie, and they killed it with the script and the direction and John DeBont's cinematography. And Die Hard was so good that it made Bruce Willis a movie star. Like, he could have... Like, Blind Date, that wouldn't have made a movie star, but Die Hard's such a great film, he became a movie star. Overnight, because... And he should have been a TV actor, because he's perfect for TV. He's like one of those guys that would kill on a show for years, but yeah, he just got so big. That's really what happened, is that he got so popular from Die Hard, because it was just such a phenomenal film, really, when you think about it. Imagine going to the theater to see Die Hard in '88 and coming out and being like, holy crap, did I just see the best action movie ever, like top 10 ever? It's like, I mean, it'd be insane. Even though Ebert gave that movie a bad review because of this annoying FBI side characters, he gave it a thumbs down just because of that. He gave it a thumbs down because of like 3 minutes of those guys. Ridiculous. Proud Mary, $3.6 million. This film's made $16 million domestic. That's actually not bad. $14 million budget, although it had a pretty big drop this weekend. 63%. So I don't think it's going to last too long. $4.7 million for Forever My Girl. That's a disastrous opening weekend in 1,115 theaters. All right. Okay. Insidious: The Last Key, from Lee Winnell, who is the original writer of the Saw movies and directed the previous Insidious film, which made money. I think this has already passed the last one. Chapter 3 made $52 million domestic and $112 million worldwide. This film has made $58 million domestic and $126 million worldwide. So the rare fourth film that has outgrossed the third film. This isn't... in fact, this hasn't made as much as the second movie, but it's also outgrossed the original film. So I think after the third movie, I think a lot of people thought this franchise was dead. And now Insidious... Oh, man, they should teach Die Hard in film school. Films like Die Hard's a film you should just study. It deserves deep analysis. It's one of those films. Like, you should study every shot in that movie. It's a perfect way to teach you how to make a perfect action movie. Like, the cutting of that movie, the way it's shot, the way everything... It's a wonderfully made movie. The way that they use space for the interior stuff and the Nakatomi building. How you reveal things in a plot in that movie is very smart, too. How you reveal things to the audience. It's a great film. I mean, how much do you spend on marketing for Insidious? I don't imagine you spend much. And I think what they were clever with the marketing on this film is they focused on the... on that female, that actress I love. I can't remember her name, but I think they focused on her. What films are you looking forward to next year? I don't know. But a lot of franchises like Saw or Paranormal Activity or that, they die off from movie to movie. What's impressive about this film and what Blumhouse does is that this is actually performing better than the third movie. So this franchise is still alive. You know, it's pretty impressive. And it's going to make, probably $70 million domestic. Star Wars: The Last Jedi at number 6, $6.5 million, 44% drop. At $604 million, $1,296 million. Now, this is the highest grossing film of the year, and I've talked about this movie for way too much. Several box office addicts were just me talking about this movie. So I'm not going to focus on it too much. What's left to be said? It had a 92% drop in China. They pulled it from Chinese theaters because it wasn't making any money over there. It performed worse than Rogue One and Force Awakens, which did better there. It's $700 million less than the previous movie. This is the biggest sequel-to-sequel drop, I think, ever. If it's not ever, it's up there. This is one of the biggest drops in a sequel ever. Now, the argument for that could be that Force Awakens made so much money. Well, of course this wasn't going to make as much money as that. I mean, to me, you were an idiot if you thought that Last Jedi was going to make $936. It's crazy that Force Awakens made that. It's kind of like the first Avatar. The Avatar sequels could still make $1 billion worldwide, because you have to think about the international box office. A lot of us who think Avatar's not going to do as well are only thinking limited in a domestic sense. We're thinking, well, Avatar might not even do like what it did here. It might only do like $250 million. Yeah, but it might also do $500 million in China. It might do $500 million in, the last Avatar movie made $2 billion just foreign. That was just the foreign box office. So James Cameron doesn't need it to do that well domestically. If the film makes $1.5 billion internationally, it could bomb here and it would still make a profit. You know, if he makes, like, if they all do that. So, but having said that, though, yes, this film way overperformed. J.J. Abrams, this was a lot of factors here. Harrison Ford, Han Solo, arguably the most lovable character in Star Wars, maybe a fan favorite. The biggest movie star out of everyone was Harrison Ford. He's in this movie. It was the new characters. It was exciting. The trailers were exciting. Who's this girl? Who's this guy with the lightsaber? Mark Hamill coming back. You know, there was so much to get excited about. There really was. You can honestly get the hype for this movie and why people were excited. Even if you didn't like Disney or Abrams, it still was exciting from a very generic standpoint to be like, wow, they're making a sequel to Return of the Jedi. Just like Phantom Menace was an exciting movie, hearing about it. Like, oh, they're going to tell some backstory. So, but this film making $1.1 billion internationally and then $936, that was just crazy. I mean, the film was going to be the first film that ever made $1 billion domestically. Oh, I agree. That I Hate Everything video was the worst video he's ever made. And I don't hate, I Hate Everything. I think he's a little bit of a normie and he's just your typical hipster and he just got big because he was good at his editing and voice and kind of what he decided with the bad movies. He was basically a great clickbait artist, which I'm not insulting. I'm pro clickbait, but yeah, his whole video is just this straw man. He makes up this elaborate straw man about why people dislike the movie and it's completely untrue. Everything he says is untrue for the most part. It's just generalizations. Then he just generically he just says like stuff that people were saying the first week it came out. He adds no new perspective or analysis to the movie. I mean, it's basically a conversation I was already having on Twitter the day after it came out. It's like, you've seen the movie 3 times and this is all you have to say? I remember when I saw the movie for the first time, I said more stuff in my live review, and I got stuff wrong in that review, but Jesus. Yeah, exactly, 12 Monkeys. Bruce Willis is amazing. Directed by Terry Gilliam. I mean, it's one of those things. I really do think, like, sometimes you have to put, like, I blame Kevin Smith for... Kevin Smith tries to, like, pass cop-out off to Bruce Willis, and that's so bullshit. It's like, dude, you don't make good enough movies to make that argument. Okay? You're not Paul Thomas Anderson. You're not Quentin Tarantino. You can come be like, Bruce Willis is the reason my movie wasn't good. And it's like, then why didn't all these other directors have issues with him? You know, all that... Maybe because they're not hacks. Oh, the thing where you're not allowed to dislike Last Jedi is just bizarre. I know. The only thing I agree with is that death threats are bad. Well, I agree, but people always get hyperbolic with that. He goes death threats, and then he shows you an example, and it's only a very few little amount of people, and he acts like that everybody's sending out death threats. Like, shut up. That whole video is so manipulative and misleading. He forms a straw man to criticisms of that movie. He makes a bullcrap argument about opinion and subjectivity that's not valid at all. Because if we set a standard of argument to our criticism, you have to meet that standard to rebut my to rebut it. You have to come back to my criticism and say, hey, I've met the standard too. When he's just saying generally like, well, people didn't get what they wanted, didn't meet their expectations, it's like, we've already debunked this. A couple weeks ago, we already debunked this whole we didn't get what we wanted fan theory is why people are mad, or it's not my version of Star Wars or that. It's like, no, this has already been debunked countless times. Alright, there's already been very valid criticism about how the film is poorly written from a very just basic screenwriting logic as a movie. Nothing to do with Star Wars. Just as a movie. Yeah, it's using the weakest arguments to build up his own... That's the thing. He went and took the weakest arguments and formed this, like, 10-minute video. He took the most basic, generic criticisms, which, of course, we all agree on that. Yeah, you shouldn't send death threats out. Yes, it's just a movie. Yes, Star Wars doesn't belong to you. I get all that. But that's, like... That's not what anyone's really discussing. We're discussing that Rian Johnson wrote a bad movie, and there's screenwriting issues, and we're trying to... And even when he tries to defend it, Joseph Gordon-Levitt wrote that 2,000-word defense, and it's awful. Like, they don't have good arguments for defending their own movie. Rian Johnson is coming out constantly having to defend it, and he has no good points. And then I Hate Everything's all like, I like the movie. And it's like, okay, dude, cool. Why didn't you just do a review of the movie about why you liked it? You do this whole narrative to be like... In fact, it's so funny because he started his channel, and it's called I Hate Everything. And how he started it was by reviewing bad movies and saying, I hate this film. And then he's on there telling us not to be hateful and be subjective and not be vitriol. It's like, dude, you got famous off people's hate and confirmation bias. That's your entire channel. It's talking about how you hate stuff. What the hell do you mean? God, I'd love to get a live stream with that guy. Like when he was on Baited and Clown Called Him, it's just like, oh my God, because he's so... There's not a more overrated commentary channel than I Hate Everything. Good production, horrible writing, horrible commentary. Yeah, I get. You need to change your name, man. That's a freaking terrible YouTube name. Basically, you didn't like the film that I happen to like, therefore you must be wrong. I know, and he does it like in a fundamental way. It was so moral grandstanding, the whole thing. It was the whole thing. Yeah, he's just a contrarian. Oh, everyone liked the movie. Everyone hated it, so I'm gonna make a video about why I liked it. That's all it comes off as. Is I'm going to do this because it's contrarian and that's my gimmick and that's how I get hits. He wants you to get mad at him in the comments and fight and click the video and get angry. It gets him more hits. It's by design. It's not because he actually gives a crap. It's by design to get hits that way. But yeah, $2 billion. It was going to be hard to top that. It almost made $2.1 billion, you know? So yeah, with the Chinese kind of not liking this at all, even the critics didn't like it over there, it seems like it's about wrapped up. There isn't much. There's no more markets for it to be released in. It made $6 million this weekend. I think it's going to have a tough time reaching that like 630, 650 of Jurassic World at this point. I don't really see it happening. So I'd say Jurassic World's pretty safe. And I remember even if you go read articles, they're so hilarious now where people are saying that, you know, well, this film's underperforming and it's had these big drops, like 68% weekend drops, the biggest drops in Star Wars. And then they say, well, yeah, but if you look at where it's going, it's still going to make $1.6 billion. There was even like I can't remember what article it was. It was Deadline Hollywood, who's just been blindly defending this movie for some odd reason. They're the ones that released the article that showed scientific data proved the Rotten Tomatoes audience score wasn't true. But Cinema Poll scientifically proven. Because it's not just people stating their opinion when they walk out of a movie. It's scientific fact. How much the word science gets used by people that aren't smart. They just say it to give themselves, like, they say it to give validity to what they're saying. Well, like science, like Joe Rogan does this a lot. If you watch Joe Rogan's podcast all of the time, what he does is he just uses the word science or talks about science, and he doesn't actually explain. He's actually kind of like a dumb guy that comes off smart. I used to think he was smart, and then the more I watch his podcast, he doesn't actually know anything. And he's wrong like 50% of the time. You can just Google check him and he's wrong. And he's always saying the words like science, science, scientists say this. And he has no qualifications. He's not a scientist. He thinks just because he talks to scientists on his podcast, then he's qualified to talk about these very complex things. And it's always telling. If you hear someone use the word science a lot or say science in a very broad, generic way, that means they haven't actually studied the field of science they're discussing. They're just using science in a broad way to sound smart. Because they don't actually have a point. Well, Pat, I've never seen someone attack I Hate Everything. I like your channel a little bit more now. I mean, yeah, well, he's just another... I mean, it's like all the big YouTubers. I mean, I've just become a PewDiePie fan the last few years. I thought PewDiePie's great now. I love PewDiePie now. I'm a Pewdie fag. But... yeah, most of the big channels like that aren't that great. I mean, really, they're not bad. I Hate Everything's not like a bad channel. He makes good YouTube content, but his commentary, there's nothing special. Even as a reviewer, he's very generic. He just has a good voice and a good presentation. He came up with a good format, but I mean, nothing. None of his videos have ever been insightful to me. I've never learned anything from an I Hate Everything video or had anything my mind be changed or anything. It's like TJ Kirk. It's like he's one of those guys. He finds a very generic topic. Like, of course people hate this movie. Or the Minions. Everyone hates the Minions and Illumination, so I'm going to make a video on the Minions. And it just gives a confirmation bias to people who hate the Minions. And he says very obvious things. We all know that their writing's bad and they're just a lazy product. Everyone feels that way that hates the Minions. He just puts it in a video, formats it well for people to feel good. And then they're like, yay, he agrees with me. I hate the Minions. This is a brilliant analysis. And it's just something that you would say to your friends if you weren't a fan of the Minions. He picks low-hanging fruit. Or he finds the contrarian point of view because that'll get you more clicks too. There's really not a lot of creativity, artistry going on in what he does, outside of editing, probably. But yeah, the actual scripts and the content's like, yeah, it's nothing. It's like he just looks up on the internet what people are saying and just copies and pastes it into his video. That's a good point. They're using the box office to make the argument that people love the film. Holy crap, Pat, did my boy just 2K bump in the last 2 weeks? He did. He did. I have 2K bumped in the last 2 weeks. It might even be more than 2,000 at this point. It's getting there. I'm about to be like where I'm going to be like I added 3,000 subscribers. But yes, the channel is growing pretty crazy. Those Star Wars videos. Which, why Raylo doesn't work is coming this week, people. I've already shot some stuff for that video. I won't spoil it, but there's going to be some sketches for that video. They're a little weird. Since we're talking about YouTube, Adam Does Movies, really good upcomer in my opinion. I've only seen a couple of his things, but I do like it a lot. Pat must be getting... I am, because those videos are getting a lot of hits. When I made the Rose video, that got 180,000 hits. Then the Luke video got like 50,000. The Finn video, 50,000. So like it's trending now. So now people are finding some of my older videos and stuff. That's kind of how YouTube works. If you're getting hits on average, the video you last uploaded, you show up more in recommended feed. So I'm showing up a lot more right now. That doesn't mean it'll last. It'll go away. It always comes and goes. But yeah, 1.3 billion. You know, this is what a lot of you guys said in the chat this would end up, so kudos to all of you who said that, because I remember a lot of us were arguing at the time if this film would make much more. A lot of us said 190 million, and the opening weekend overperformed, and I think that's what skews the numbers a lot. But a lot of us were saying, you know, a lot of people were saying, well, it'll still make 1.5 billion, 1.8 billion. And the more we were getting into it, a lot of you were telling me week by week, I think this will make 1.3, 1.3. And you guys all kept saying that that's the cutout point. And you guys were right. It's made 1.3. It's at Harry Potter Deathly Hallows worldwide. Domestically, this is a juggernaut. 604 million domestic is huge. Like, you can't knock that. That foreign total is disappointing, though. You're coming off a film that made 1.1 billion. And now this film's about scratching at 700 million. Now, I'm just saying, for Star Wars, the international box office, you think it would be a little bit bigger. I can get the domestic total being smaller, but it's like Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron's a great example. It didn't do nearly as well as the first Avengers domestically. Like, not even close. It was like almost 200 million less. But at the international box office, it made a lot more. The first Avengers made... let's go. The first Avengers made 895 million foreign. So it made 1.5 billion worldwide. But the second film made 946 million foreign and did less domestically. But if it had just made like a little bit more, if it had been able to get in the 500 million, mid, it could have outgrossed the original Avengers. So really, even though this didn't do as well as the previous film, it's pretty much stayed on par. And now Infinity War looks like it's going to make like 2 billion. Where with Disney, they blew their wad. Their first film was the big one because of the hype. But now this film has already declined. You have to assume Han Solo's not going to be making this kind of money. You just have to assume that. And we don't really know how Episode 9 is going to perform. So it's very confusing. The best low-hanging fruit the show's I Hate Everything Doesn't Do Crap is his Destiny review 2. Oh, totally. I would have Dishonored Wolf on, but yeah, I don't think there's a way for us to get in contact. If you guys want me to talk to Dishonored Wolf, you have to send him messages. That's what you guys don't get. People don't just collaborate with you. There has to be demand. If you guys want me on that stuff, tweet and all that. I did go take over Mundane Matt's show like a week ago. I went on Mundane Matt doing a live stream, and like 6 people in the chat were all fans. A couple of you were in that chat. You were like fans, and they were like, "Yo, Pat," and I ended up answering questions in his chat. I was kind of like I was talking to people in his chat. Mundane Matt. If you go find one of his streams, he actually talked to me a couple times in there. You can see my name in the chat. I'm just writing random stuff, and he's like, "Oh, please rewind." But that was pretty funny. It's very comparable to Age of Ultron, and I think that quality not meeting fan expectations has something to do with it. I agree. The hype isn't there. There was a crowd-pleasing factor to Force Awakens and the first Avengers. Everyone who walked out was very elated by the movie and the final act in particular. There was just this excitement. Even if you don't like those films, that had this energy to them. And that isn't in Age of Ultron. It's a more depressing, messy film. There's less big moments. And the same thing here with this movie. Even if you love this movie, it's not as big of a crowd, and it's not meant to be a crowd pleaser like Force Awakens was. That's not the kind of movie it is. But I think this will affect the future of Star Wars. Even though these numbers are so huge, kind of like Civil War. It did less, but it's like it made so much. But the question is, though, after the Episode 9, Hans, what movies could they make that are going to keep making money? I mean, that's my question. Don't get me wrong, no franchise has performed like this where the films keep making $1 billion something every time they come out. That's pretty crazy. But, this is like, Fast and the Furious. If you look at that movie, it made $1 billion at the foreign box office, it made like $350 million in China. It's like you can almost say this franchise is consistently more impressive at the box office for the fact that it's had these lows and then been able to bounce back and then become bigger than it ever was in the last couple movies. While Star Wars, it's almost like you could say that Force Awakens was the top out. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see. The Commuter, 51% drop, 25 mil domestic, 36 million worldwide. That is a new Liam Neeson actioner from a director he's worked with several times. Paddington 2, which I cannot wait to see, one of the best reviewed films of all time, according to Rotten Tomatoes, has 100% on that website with 170 reviews, 8.6 average, 8.3. Now, last week I said how I was very upset with this movie's performance, and it felt like it wasn't going to perform as well as the first Paddington, which had a pretty bad opening weekend but ended up holding on to 76 mil domestic, and it made 250 million worldwide. The weird thing with Paddington is they never release it during December, during the holidays, when they're clearly like Christmas movies. They always release them early in the year and they just get lost. I don't get why they didn't release the first Paddington during Christmas, and I don't get why they didn't release the second Paddington during Christmas. They can shoot Star Wars spinoff until the end of days for 100 million pop, and they'll make 607 million minimum easy. I don't really agree with that. I don't think that'll keep happening consistently. They would have to keep being good movies, you know? The thing with Marvel is that every movie consistently is critically acclaimed and people love. Not all of them, but most of them. Like, people even really like Ant-Man or Guardians of the Galaxy. If Han Solo's not that good, and if Episode 9 isn't the big film, then I don't know. Could they make a Yoda movie that everyone... I don't really agree with that. Because the part that's exciting about what Marvel does is they introduce new characters, and then people go to see those new characters to see how they tie into the future films. The problem with Star Wars is that it's all one long story right now, and these spin-offs, even though Rogue One did really well, that had Darth Vader and all that, like, they might be able to do it for a few years, but I don't think it'll have that decade-long thing that Marvel has. And like I said, Marvel's growing. Marvel's going to have bigger box office in the next few years. While you could say that, you could make the argument Star Wars is going to start having a decline from movie to movie. New subscriber, how did you come up with the name Please Rewind? Basically my name before was called Renaissance Men, because when I started this channel, I started it with a group of friends, and we called ourselves Renaissance Men. And when my friend left, I started doing a character, and I just kept that name. And then one day, somebody started saying to me, you should talk about movies more and have the movie name. And I was like, you're right. And so it just was off the top of my head, honestly. I had the idea for a while. I'd been working on a script called Please Rewind about a guy who works at a video store in the 90s. And it was an idea I had before. I was playing with this idea of a guy in a video store. And I guess it's kind of like the video store repair shop in Red Letter Media. But I knew the name Be Kind Rewind wouldn't work, because that's that movie by Michel Gondry, and somebody has that name. But Please Rewind, I remember a lot of the tapes when I was a kid saying Please Rewind on them. And when you'd get them at the video store, they wouldn't always say Be Kind Rewind, it would say Please Rewind. So that kind of just became the conceit of the channel. And where I'm at is a very depressed video store employee who is upset that people don't rewind their VHS tapes. Has Ron Howard ever made a bad film? Several. He's made several bad films. In fact, his last few movies have been bad. But let me name some. The Da Vinci Code's a bad movie. Inferno's a bad movie. Angels and Demons is a bad movie. That movie he made, Out to Sea, is a bad movie with Chris Hemsworth. Yeah, How the Grinch Stole Christmas is a pretty bad movie. Tell me more about that script. It'd be cool with another female MC if she's actually well written. They made that movie already. They made what movie already? I don't understand. It'll be funny if the main protagonist in the next trilogy is also female. Yeah, no, I know it's all been females, even in Battlefront. If you're saying they made a movie where somebody works in a video store and it's called like, well, yeah. That there's 100 movies about people working in video stores. Randall worked in a video store in Clerks. I mean, it's a pretty cliche thing. Yeah, it's like back in the 90s, there was a lot of people. That movie, yeah, that movie's terrible too. Yeah, Vince Vaughn and Kevin yeah, the Deception or something. Yeah, he's actually made a lot of bad movies, I think. I like Ron Howard too, but Jesus. But anyway, Paddington 2. I thought it wasn't going to do as well. But luckily, that international box office for that cute little bear is terrific. So 147 million foreign, So even if it doesn't do that great domestically, and it probably won't reach the total of the original here, it could pass 200 million worldwide. This has a $50 million budget. I've been hearing nothing but wide critical acclaim for Hugh Grant. I've been hearing Hugh Grant is amazing in this movie from like everywhere. The Greatest Showman. We got to talk about this movie. What an impressive box office run. Impressive as hell. I have had to eat so much crow on this movie. The opening weekend of this film was abysmal. It was 8 million, and I said then this film was a bomb. It's not going to pick up. I mean, I was if you can go back and watch that episode, I'm talking some mad trash. Have you ever seen The End of the Effing World on Netflix? I think I did. I like Ron Howard in Happy Days. Yeah, American Graffiti. I like a lot of his old work. Night Shift, Gung Ho. The Paper I did on one of my videos, Underrated Classics. I think Apollo 13 is a very good movie. I think Ron Howard's made a lot of good films. But yeah, The Greatest Showman, if you go back to the thing, I'm like, man, this film's a bomb, because the opening week was bad. It cost $84 million. It had all this hype. Wow. Kudos to Hugh Jackman and everyone involved with this film. I do not know how this word of mouth has been so good. This is going to have one of the best multipliers in a long time. I mean, the multiplier's huge. This film had an $8 million opening weekend. That is not, even during the holidays when it had that, and you're like, well, it could still, that's not great. And over the holiday, it was $13 million. Okay, and then that next weekend after that, $15 million to $20, then $13, then $12. Look at these drops. 11%, 9%. Plus 17 there. Drop this week, 11%. It made $11 million this weekend. It did better this weekend than it did on its opening. Its opening 3 days. This film is at $113 million domestic with that $84 million budget, which, you know, you got to count marketing, so they probably haven't made a lot of money. But this could have been a disaster. This looked awful all across the board. Like, it looked like, man, I mean, you have the La La Land guys writing the music, Hugh Jackman, Mr. Broadway's in it, Zac Efron. I mean, everything about this looked like it was going to be hit. And it was like, well, Zac Efron's box office poison continues. Because Baywatch really disappointed, and Mike and Dave Need Wedding Day. Outside of Neighbors 1, Zac Efron hasn't had a real hit for most of his career. And then this comes along. And Hugh Jackman, who's coming off Logan, which was a very successful film, both critically and financially, and he was a producer on that, produces and makes this film. And it has a terrible opening, and it looks like it's going to be one of the biggest bombs of 2017. And then it ends up being one of the biggest surprise hits. So you going to play Monster Hunter, man? Yeah, I love Monster Hunter. Well, I remember Monster Rancher? That was a good one. He watched it at Camp David. Hugh Jackman is a draw in a time that stars don't have that much pull. Hey man, just ask the question you want. I'm sorry if I've been missing your question. I'm not trying to ignore it. Let me go look up. I'm sorry if I didn't see it. I keep imagining Zack Snyder's Berserk, overly stylized CGI barf missing the point of the manga and being unintentionally hilarious. Yes. I almost kind of want to see Zack Snyder's Berserk, though, because it would be that funny. Oh, Hugh Jackman seems like a completely professional good dude. I love that he's been married to the same woman. She's older than him, too. She's like 10 years older. He's been married to the same woman 20 years. All across the board, just here, he's a great guy. Good guy, professional. Nothing bad to say about him. This is a big deal for Zac Efron. He hasn't been in a movie that's made money in a long time. I mean, like, domestically. Because Baywatch ended up breaking even worldwide. But yeah, $231 million worldwide. This film should break $300 million. It's not done yet. It's easily going to make $130 million, if not more. This could make $140 million to $150 million domestic. For a film that had such a bad opening weekend, it's held on. Very impressive. This is one of the best. Like, it's all about multipliers. Like, Star Wars doesn't have a very good multiplier. Now, when you're talking about that amount of money, it is apples and oranges. But Star Wars, I think the multiplier is not even 3. This film's multiplier is like 10. It's 10 times more than it's. I mean, it's crazy. Like, the multiplier is. When you have a multiplier like that means people are going out and saying, go see this movie. It's solely word of mouth at that point. At that point, it's no longer. It's people going out and spreading it. Oh, yeah, Rebecca Ferguson. Yes, she's amazing. I love Rebecca Ferguson. So, yeah, great performance. Really good stuff. Okay, The Greatest Showman. Yeah, great job. The Post by Steven Spielberg. 37% decline. $45 million domestic. $50 million budget. $55 million worldwide. Hasn't broke even yet. I don't actually see this doing that. This looks like it's going to perform on par with, like, Bridge of Spies. So, A little disappointing considering that it's Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks and Spielberg. You think it would be able to make $100-something million. Den of Thieves overperformed this weekend with Gerard Butler and 50 Cent. And O'Shea Jackson. Isn't that the guy from Straight Outta Compton, I believe? But yeah, 15.3 million. I don't know what the budget for this movie is. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. But yeah, I would have thought this was going to be a bomb. So kudos to everyone involved. I guess it has to do with 50 Cent. He might have brought in some of the black audience. And Gerard Butler occasionally has pull. It depends. Gerard Butler's career has been really disappointing. I really like him. Let's talk about the movie of the week. This is Box Office Addict's movie of the week. It's the movie that I think is worth talking about as the one that's really the most impressive performer, and that's this movie, 12 Strong, which, once again, why wouldn't this film do well? It's the subject matter. Movies like this do well. War dramas. Not all war dramas like Hurt Locker Bond, but typically they don't do that bad. If you go look, American Sniper was a huge hit. American Sniper made tons of money. I don't know what the budget is for this movie. Can someone in the chat tell me what the budget is, or maybe Google it and then give me some information? If you were gay, wouldn't you want to plug Zac Efron's little neg hole? Oh my goodness. Have you seen Pawn Sacrifice? I do. Yeah, I love Pawn Sacrifice. Tobey Maguire. Edward Zwick. The very good Edward Zwick, who's a filmmaker I'm a fan of. Yes, you're right. Pawn Sacrifice is very overlooked. People don't know that's when Bobby Fischer played... I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. Who's that Russian chess player? Liev Schreiber's in that too, and they play chess. It's amazing. That famous. It was the late '60s or the early '70s. I think it was like 1972 or something like. But I used to be really into chess and Bobby Fischer. I still play chess, but I don't play it as much as I used to. I used to be kind of obsessive about chess and chess history. And I don't dislike Zac Efron. I actually like Zac Efron. I just think he's not in a lot of movies that are that great. But anyway, 16.5 million. This stars the great Chris Hemsworth, who's coming off Thor Ragnarok, which is it's definitely his biggest solo movie. Michael Shannon, the even greater Michael Shannon. This is one of the bigger movies he's been in for a little while. And Michael Pena, who's an actor I always like. And I'm glad he gets a lot of work. This was released in 3,000 theaters. I think a lot of people thought this was going to open really bad, below 10 million. I saw a lot of estimates for it, but it might even come in higher than this, at like 17 million. Now, this isn't an amazing opening weekend, and like I said, I don't know the budget of this movie, so maybe this opening weekend's bad in context. But yeah, this budget is $35 million. Okay, well, with a $35 million budget, $16.5 million opening weekend's good, and we just have to assume the word of mouth's going to be good because this is overperforming right now. So if this film can hold on and kind of perform like Lone Survivor, which if we go back to Lone Survivor, that had a much better opening weekend. I think that opened to like 30 million or something by Peter Berg. Yeah, Lone Survivor had a 37 million opening weekend, but I think that just had better marketing and it kind of had that Mark Wahlberg factor at the time. But that doesn't mean 12 Strong can't make like 60 million domestic and make a big profit worldwide. So overall, good opening weekend. That's not bad. You know, they probably would have been happier if it opened to like 20, 25, but you can't be upset. I mean, it could have been a bomb. Excuse me. Fun fact, Bobby Fischer said the Jews did 9/11. Hey, you could play chess, though. Thoughts on The Lost World? I feel like it's a bit misunderstood and over-criticized by the best Jurassic Park sequel, and even though that doesn't say much. Here's the thing about The Lost World. I used to feel that way. I loved that movie as a kid, then I hated it. Then I rewatched it, and I thought, you know what, people underrate this movie. Even James Rolfe did a video on it. Like, yeah, there's good set pieces. There's a lot good about it. Why do people crap on this? This is the best sequel. And then I rewatched it a few years ago, and I think The Lost World's a pretty bad movie. So I don't really think it's misunderstood. I think it is what it is. I think Spielberg didn't want to make it. I think he phoned it in. I think it's a very by-the-books, generic Spielberg film. It feels like it's like Temple of Doom. I go rewatch Temple of Doom, and there's stuff in that movie that just doesn't work. The little kid that meets Short Round's just not good. And I feel that way about... I'm sorry, I just feel that... I think Lost World, the T-Rex sequence is amazing. His King Kong, that scene's amazing, where he's in the city. Even though there's that horrible plot hole where they cut the raptors attacking the boat. But yeah, the acting's mediocre. The writing's kind of terrible. There's no logic to Jurassic Park 2. It's a movie of moments, like the cliff sequence and all that, but really the majority of the movie's really bland, and it's one of Spielberg's worst efforts. And there's no passion behind it, and has no awe. So I can't really know. I think The Lost World isn't misunderstood. I think it's just kind of bad. It's not bad in the sense that it's not watchable and entertaining. It's a fun movie to watch. You can watch it, but if you really are critical about it, it falls apart. It's pretty. It's a pretty bad. It's like a big B movie, and even on that level, it's not that great, in my opinion. And Pat, you mentioned Trek a few times over the last box office addict. Can you expand on your feelings on the franchise and its current state? Um, Man, that almost is like a video in itself. If I start talking about Star Trek, I might go on for like 2 hours. So I don't know if I can answer that one right now because there's so much to say about Star Trek. And you have to go into every show and the people that were behind it. And because when I was into Star Trek when I was a kid, I was just into the movies. I really liked the movies when I was a kid. I saw all the movies, but I got into the show later. My father really liked it, as every kid did in the 60s. But then I got into the Star Trek as like probably in my late teens. I was actually pretty older. I wasn't into it much as a kid. But now, since then, I've seen everything Star Trek, and I'm a big fan of it all. But yeah, I don't think Temple of Doom's a good movie at all. I actually think Temple of Doom's a really bad movie. Every time I rewatch it, I'm like, this is a really bad movie. The writing's really bad. The like set pieces are ridiculous. The final one's great through the mind thing, but yeah, like that little kid that sure is terrible. Kate Capshaw's really bad in it. It's got that bat scene. Like there's so much stuff about it that's just it's a problem to me. It feels like generic Spielberg. It doesn't feel like Steven Spielberg. What makes Steven Spielberg great is that he takes those generic adventure blockbuster films like those and then makes them feel special and fresh again. The problem with Temple of Doom and The Lost World is it feels like you're going through the motions. It doesn't have that Spielberg thing. It's like another director probably could have made this, and maybe even better, it would have been a better choice. It doesn't reach that standard that like Last Crusade does, or Jurassic Park does, or Jaws does. And for me, that standard means something. Yes, I do like Shawshank Redemption. I like it quite a bit. Blood Money, only if you had Aiden Paladin. I'm not talking about Star Trek with Aiden Paladin. I don't want to say something that makes her cry for 45 minutes and she acts like I broke up with her, even though we have no personal relationship whatsoever. But yeah, I want to avoid that as much as possible. I don't want her crying on a live stream for a half hour and be like, mute button, mute button. I can't really think of anything about Temple of Doom that works. I don't hate the movie. I just can't think about it. The villains kind of suck. The plot's kind of crappy. The acting's not that great from anyone. Harrison Ford's the only one who's really decent in it. And yeah, it's not that funny. It's got some good action scenes and good pacing, but I don't really know I can't really think of anything that's good in it. Man, I love when everyone always says the best trilogies, and they're always like Indiana Jones, Evil Dead, Star Wars. Nobody ever brings up the Colors trilogy by Kieslowski, which is better, or the Man with No Name trilogy, which is to me far superior to any other trilogy, because each film's like a masterpiece. It's like, and each film becomes even greater than the previous one, or like, yeah, and if we're talking just spiritual trilogies, not one storyline, there's a lot of great trilogies throughout cinema and international cinema and all that. So it's such a weird, like, what's the best trilogy? It's like, I don't know, there's a lot of great trilogies. It's what kind of movies you're into, I think. When did it become cool to crap on Return of the Jedi? For a long time. For a long time it became popular to crap on Return of the Jedi. I'd say years ago. I'd say even when the movie came out, people had issues with Return of the Jedi. Oh no, Temple of Doom has a great opening scene, I agree. But yeah, I can't think of much good about it outside. I've seen it when I was a kid, it was my favorite one, but I've rewatched it the last few years several times. It's like Tim Burton's Batman. I can't even like set through it anymore. Like I can't even get through. I used to love Tim Burton's Batman, and I can't even finish it now. It's so bad. It's like, this is just a really boring, badly made for the actions. Everyone says Christopher Nolan can't direct action scenes. I guess nobody remembers what Tim Burton action scenes look like. Holy shit, they are bad. Yeah, the Leone trilogy. There's a lot of great trilogies out there. By Bible Black. Hey, to Bible Black's credit, they do have a consistent plot and lore that they stay pretty loyal to. I will give them that. Yeah, man, I don't know what to tell you. Return of the Jedi, it's a flawed movie. I mean, it just is. That opening at Jabba's place, I kind of hate it. I used to love it, but when you watch it now, the opening at Jabba's place, the plan they have is so convoluted to get Han out of there and so ridiculous. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. The plan is ridiculous. And it drags out the movie. There's this long 20, it should be like 8 minutes at the most, and the opening is so dragged out, it kills the pacing. Then it just becomes the remake of New Hope again. They have to blow up a Death Star, except there's a shield now. And then they go to Endor. Harrison Ford's not even showing up. He's not even Han anymore. He stays at a door for 45 freaking minutes. And the only good stuff's with Luke. It's Luke's character development, Mark Hamill's performance, the throne room sequence, the whole thing with Vader. That's all amazing. That stuff's all as good as Empire. But like, yeah, it all kind of just, it feels like a kid's movie, and it doesn't feel like what led from Empire. They don't feel connected, and it's more shallow than the original movie. And I don't, yeah, it's if Return of the Jedi was a truly great film, that trilogy would be just sacred. But Return of the Jedi is flawed. It's got so much of that George Lucas thing to it, that prequels to it. There's so much creatures, and Spielberg was supposed to direct it, and the DGA wouldn't let him, and I think that affects the movie. Richard Marquand's just like he feels like a yes man. It just lacks vision. It feels like a movie made by multiple people, like a committee of people who had these ideas for action scenes and plot threads, but it's not really as coherent and beautifully told as a story. I think Lawrence Kasdan could have wrote a better film, and I think Spielberg directing it was a great idea. So I think it was just that, circumstantial. But I don't think it's a bad movie. Return of the Jedi is a good movie. It's just not a great movie, and it's not as good as the previous two movies. It's the most flawed out of the original trilogy, and unfortunately the things that are bad about it were things that would become more apparent in the prequels. In particular, a lot of like I hate to focus on the Ewoks, but at least the Ewoks are in the plot in that movie. But just the whole idea of like, okay, this is more about merchandise now than it is about totally telling a story. And you get that feeling from Return of the Jedi, and it was kind of that movie. Yeah, David Lynch was one of the guys David Lynch was asked to direct it, and he turned it down. Spielberg was supposed to direct it. David Lynch was never supposed to direct it. David Lynch went and had a meeting with George Lucas and was basically like, what? What are you talking about? But Spielberg was going to direct it, but the DGA wouldn't let him do it because, I know Return of the Jedi. David Lynch was never signed. He was just asked and turned it down. Spielberg wanted to direct it and was going to direct it, and yeah, because of the DGA bullcrap. I think that's why they even hired Richard Marquand, because he wasn't a member. That's why Spielberg couldn't direct E.T. and Poltergeist at the same time, because of the Directors Guild. And George Lucas had left the Directors Guild, and they wouldn't let Spielberg direct Return of the Jedi. The final showdown with Luke, Vader, and the Emperor, totally, that's the best part of the movie. The throne, that's the problem. Jedi's a movie, whenever it talks about it, they always go, man, I love that movie, I love the throne room scene. That's about 10 minutes of the movie. Or they're like, I love the speeder bike chase. That's about a minute. They never say like, man, I love all that stuff on Endor when Han's at that door. I really love when 5 stormtroopers jump on a speeder bike to chase one Ewok. I really love at Jabba's place when where we just sit around for a while and nothing really happens. I really love Lando in this movie, but like there's not a lot of there's great scenes, but the whole movie's not really great. There's a lot of like Spielberg should have won Best Picture for Saving Private Ryan. Denis Villeneuve has recently said that Dune movie could be described as Star Wars for adults. I have described it as Star Wars for adults. Go back to my Dune video from a few weeks ago. Not my video, my box was that. I literally said Dune, the book, reads like adult Star Wars. They're basically Jedi. Paul Atreides is Luke Skywalker. They're on a desert planet. There's this mysticism to it. It's fantasy more than science fiction. Dune's way more of a fantasy book than it is. The fact that people always try to pigeonhole it into sci-fi, like it's hard sci-fi, is kind of weird because it's much more fantastical and fantasy-based. But yeah, I've always said, I said that weeks ago. I was like, Dune plays like Star Wars. If you go read the original book, it reads like a more serious adult version of the Star Wars story. It's the hero's journey. It's very Joseph Campbell. Paul's journey is the hero's journey. Very straightforward too. But I'd say you could easily see the Dune comparison to Star Wars. The world building aspect of it, the dirtiness of it, lived in technology. People who have lived in this technology and stuff like that. The chosen one who has to rise up, and has this conflicting thing with this feelings towards his father. But yeah, very, very similar. I I hate porgs. They are cute for all 5 seconds till you realize that's all they do. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, I've always said the Dune thing. Yeah, you could. In fact, I would say Dune was an influence on Star Wars. George Lucas might say it was all Flash Gordon and Kurosawa and all that, but I think a lot of the world building aspects are kind of in the book Dune. I think he did. Yeah, I think he stole a lot from Dune too. Yeah, a lot of people were Dune fanboys in the '90s too. Like even Casacrelli, he in the first Phantasm, he has the black box from Dune. And if you watch the original Star Wars, George Lucas will never say even the. And it's weird too because then there's Jawas in Star Wars, and then there's Jawas in Phantasm. And when I met Michael Baldwin, he pretty much told me that Casacrelli stole that. And I'm like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, we looked at the Star Wars script before we made Phantasm. I'm like, what? But I agree though. Yeah, people never talk about the Dune influence on Star Wars. They always talk about Dune in a different way. But it's like actually. Jodorowsky's Dune was... Yeah, of course it was. Yeah, you could see so much influence of Dune on Star Wars. It's crazy to deny it. It's so much in the world building and what Herbert did. Okay, people. So yeah, 12 strong. Performed way better than expected. And good job on everyone there. Good job. Don't know who made that movie. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. What the hell is with this movie? Oh my god. I don't even know what to say anymore. Is this movie going to make $1 billion? Opening weekend was amazing, and then I said, wow, this film's going to make 200 mil domestic. Blows that out of the water. Blows that, just kills it, man. Just destroys it. Next weekend after that, I go, okay, it might make 250. Then it's like, oh my god. Then I was saying to you guys, man, this movie, I mean, when they made this for $90 million. Okay, this directed by Jake Kasdan, who did Zero Effect and some other films. He's son of Lawrence Kasdan. And The Rock's a big star, don't get me wrong, Jack Black's a star, Kevin Hart, but this is all of their biggest film like this. This is not like the Fast and the Furious films. This is not a Kevin Hart comedy. This is bigger than Kung Fu Panda. Kung Fu frickin' Panda. Didn't do this well. It's crazy, this movie's performance. Because I was saying, when they released this, there's no doubt that in their head, the high mark for this movie was $350 million worldwide to $500 million. They probably thought, well, we're lucky if we make like $150 million domestic, maybe more. And then internationally we'll do okay. And The Rock's international pool is huge. But man, the property of Jumanji, the premise of this movie, the cast, and the reviews, because you have to include word of mouth. People like this movie. I like this movie. I thought this was an entertaining movie. But let's just look at this box office performance here, folks. 38% increase. Then an 83% increase. I mean, look right there. It got up higher on its second weekend. Then 37 million, 25% drop, 28 million, 24% drop. This weekend, 20 million, 28% drop. This is insanity. Not only is this film going to make $350 million domestic, it might make more than that. And what I was saying during those weeks, I was saying, if you go back to box office, I was saying, well, this will probably end up making like, 500 million worldwide. That's the cutoff point I see, maybe a little bit more. Then I said, well, maybe it'll look like it'll do 600 million. And then I'm like, well, maybe it'll do even better than that. Now it's going to make 800 million worldwide. It's going to make 850 million worldwide. Jumanji really surprised me. All right, well, I guess that's it for this box office. I really wanted this to be a shorter episode of like 90 minutes, and it went up for 2.5 hours, so didn't quite reach last episode, but God. At least I talked about the box office this week. Can we at least say that? I think I spent way too much time on this Arnold Rock conversation. I agree. We have sure spent a while. Yeah, I agree. Probably the last 20 minutes was a little unnecessary. So I'm just going to end it here while I'm ahead and go off on that. All right, guys. Like, comment, and subscribe. Guys, tell me, what do you think about the box office this week? How do you think about 12 Strong? What do you think about the openings and all that? You sound like Tommy Wiseau. Oh, Tommy, no. I'm going to get you pregnant. I mean, to be fair, Arnold kind of looks like Tommy Wiseau, too. I mean, sounds like Tommy Wiseau, too. They have that, like, Austrian German sounding way of speaking. It's very similar. JCVD was better than both. Yes. We're not over 3 hours. We're at 2.5. 2 hours and 34 minutes. We are not over 3 hours. The rumor for years that Arnold can do a full American accent but won't on screen. I have heard that he takes classes to keep it. Plug the podcast, bro. It doesn't have a name. We're starting a podcast soon, me and Blood Money, and I don't know what the hell it's called, but when we get to it, we'll tell you guys. But yeah, we'll, he got me too'd. He got me too'd. Me too, you're tearing me apart! I didn't touch none of that Mickey Mouse stuff. No. But I love you guys. Thank you for watching. To the new subscribers out there that have been watching, awesome. To the people who are regular followers of Box Office Addict, awesome. Keep it up. Let's grow this show. Let's get more collabs going down the road. Let's blow this up more and more. And we'll shut up, Blood Money. Jesus Christ! I didn't hand you the microphone, dog. Put the mic down. You're like a little anxious puppy that's nipping at my legs. Do I have to kick the puppy? Don't make me kick the puppy. Jesus. Anyway, thank you for watching. And if you watch the show, you're a box office addict yourself. And I'm not here to help you with your addictions. I'm here to encourage them because I want you to keep watching. And I love all you guys, and it's been great and it's fun. And if this is my Bill Burr Monday morning podcast, then it's Pat's Sunday evening crapshoot. But I'm going to play you guys some music out. Thank you for the conversation about Arnold Rock. I'm not trying to like crap on anyone. We're just talking. Don't worry about it. It's just interesting thought bubbles, honestly. That's all it is. But I appreciate the chat today and I appreciate everyone here. Thank you for the great questions. And come back next Sunday, please. Don't leave Box Office Addict behind. Puts the mic down. Thank God. Jesus. The level of entitlement of this guy. You make someone a mod and then they think they just own the damn thing? Oh my God.